Oh, that's a problem.
Why are we so small?
Help me.
No.
Oh, hey, there we go. We're normal.
Yay.
Hello. Ah, doing well.
Yes.
Guilty. And just Susan also exists. Yes. Hmm?
My mic, please. Oh, you're capturing. Oh, you want to capture this screen? Oh, okay. Why don't you capture this screen? There you go. Nice. Nice. Fixed it. Problem solved. Welcome, everybody. This is the final installment in the Mages of Pleasant Valley series, and even by that, it's not going to be much of an installment. I'm sorry. I'm going to be bringing the series to a rather abrupt end. As it turns out, Carator has a job, and he's not going to be able to reliably get a certain day off because of the caseloads he's going to have. And I was trying to think of ways to, to work around that. And it's going to be difficult because Nicholas is such kind of the glue holding the team together, I feel like.
He's more the money.
He is like the bankroller for the team. They're all living in his mansion, using his cars. And while I think it could move on without him, there's also, of course, I have tied the Bassettes into the story, in Nicholas particularly. And I don't know. There's a lot going on, and I feel like it's going to be hard to move forward. So instead, what we're going to do today is sort of a Q&A between the players here, as well as any of you out there. I'm going to be trying to answer questions that you guys have about the characters and the scenarios that have gone on, and try to fill in all the blanks. And then if we have time left over at the end after answering the questions to hopefully everyone's satisfaction, we'll go over to Gardic Phone and have fun doodling characters and stuff. But for right now, let's start off by talking about, I think, the biggest thing, which was the system itself. Because the writers over here, if you guys don't know, here is the book that we've been pulling from. And I know it's come up on stream multiple times because we've had to look things up. I want you to take a look here at the chapters. So we have the introduction over here with, various things. In most other role-playing books, you're going to have character creation near the start. You're going to go over like some basics of like what your stats are, your attributes, and then how to build your character. And then from there, you kind of pad out the rest of the world building. In World of Darkness in general, but in Mage specifically, because that's what I'm used to, this shit it's all lore and world building for like the first 5 chapters in the book. You're just reading about like the backstory of the world, about all the conflicts, and then the kind of fluff and things about the mages, and then the different groups in there, and then the different worlds connected to it. And then by the time you get down to the second section of the book and you get to chapter 6, that's when you just start getting to create a character then.
and even by that point, you still don't actually know everything that you need to know to make your character.
Right,
Wolf are certainly the most tabletop RPG of tabletop RPG developers.
So if this ever ends up in the eyes and ears of a person that writes for the different World of Darkness universes. I understand that you guys want to put storytelling first. I get that. I feel that. And I understand the logic that goes behind that. But at the end of the day, you're making a tabletop role-playing game. This is a game with game mechanics, and I'm going to need you to do that as the forefront. Put your mechanics first, and then the lore. But not only that. That's my first gripe with this book. The second one is things are just all over the fucking place. Trying to find exactly where something is written down in concrete terms is impossible. Do you want to know how paradox is done? How about you check 5 different places in the book, and then they also have optional rules under each of them.
Hey, Eo, how do you cast a spell that allows you to move an object through an open portal?
Oh, that's a great question, because I don't know.
Actually, you do know. It's in 3 different locations, and all the rules contradict each other.
Wait, no, you probably need space for that.
Yeah, you do. You need correspondence for it. But the game will also tell you that if you want to move things through it, you have to have like another one of the spheres to match it. Unlike, pretty much any other thing, you could do things on its own. It feels like correspondence has to be tethered to something else in the rules as written.
Tethered as in correspondence is actually garbage on its own and you shouldn't use it. Oh god, why?
It's just, it feels so hamstrung compared to other things. And then also, like, I feel like entropy and time have ended up being very close because one's about fortune telling, basically, and another one's about seeing the future. Oh my gosh, excuse me. I don't know why I'm so gassy right now. Thanks for the nuts. And yeah, I've left all the redeems and stuff on because we're not really role-playing. We're kind of just talking, so feel free to have fun with that. But
yeah. For instance, I pulled up the 2nd edition Pathfinder book. It goes Introduction, Character Creation. Mm-hmm. And the introduction is how you play the game, like how you roll dice and stuff.
Mm-hmm. How you read keywords, how you understand what things you need to do in order to complete a sequence of events.
Yeah. What is a role-playing game? Basics of gameplay. Playing the game. Using this book.
Yeah, even games that I played that have hyper-specific uses, like this. Mage is very specific. It's not D&D where it's relatively open with what kind of character you're going to make. What are you going to be doing? Are you going to be a caster, fighter, rogue, whatever? I played like Lancer once, and the book is logically laid out to say, cool, so it's expected you'll be doing something involving giant robots in this particular game. So let's show you the rules for how to succeed on rolls. Okay, now let's show you how all this nonsense works. Read with us. And it makes sense. Because it's there. It's like, what's the goal of the game? Pilot robots, blow up dudes. Okay, cool, how do I do that? Roll these dice. Let's get into the specifics later. In the meantime, make your character. It just makes sense. You lay it out so that people can first see how do you play the game, second see why would I want to play the game, and third go, okay, well, how do I start? My god, this book...
Yeah.
I've made GURPS before. And GURPS, if you haven't played before, you have to like simulate physics sometimes in that game, and it's less complicated and hard to find things than this one is.
Goddamn.
And I know Spoonie and Crusader have more experience in World of Darkness than me. It's true that this is kind of like a theme that runs through all of their IPs, right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
I have the Deviant the Renegades PDF open. Character creation starts at page 73.
Right. Well,
that chapter ends on page 178.
Yeah, in this book, character creation starts on page 245.
So they've gotten better over time.
Well, okay, here's the other thing is, this is Mage 20th Anniversary Edition.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be the book that fixes the issues when it was first released.
Mm-hmm.
And they only made it worse.
Seemingly so. Instead of like curating the rules and making a very comprehensive book, it seems like they just tried to amalgamate them together and then not give concrete answers and instead put optional rules for like every single mechanic in here and say, well, you could just tool with this. But there's a lot of ways that you can ruin other parts of the game by taking an optional rule in a different part and not even realize it until you're in the thick of it. So it's just, the book itself was very frustrating. And then on top of that, like, well, it's always going to be on top of that because we're going to just keep getting deeper and deeper. Like, the different spheres, I understand, even from my experience of playing over a decade ago, that the spheres were essentially, the first dot is sort of a sensory perception of that thing. Then the second one is a manipulation of the existing one. The third one is manipulating it outside of yourself, so you can like control things further away or not directly on your body. The fourth one will start allowing you to create some of it, but then you also have to have prime, which is, again, something that I feel like everyone has to have a little bit of prime, so that's kind of silly. And I think, honestly, they should have just made that a part of being a mage is prime, or maybe your avatar should just be your prime, but ugh. That aside. And then after that, it's like mastery of it. But then some of them, you have to ask, well, what about spirit? You know, you have sensing spirit and then manipulating spirit so you can like talk to them and stuff. And then 3 is just more manipulation because you're not going to like manipulate your own spirit. So it has to already be outer. And then the 4th is creating. Are you making new spirits? And then... Kiana has brought this up to me. At what point is something spirit and what point is something mind? Because you would think the mind is like the consciousness, but then what is the spirit?
Oh, World of Darkness ghost rules are confusing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes.
Also, it did occur to me that it actually would be kind of fun to mess with your own spirit, but the book doesn't really say anything about anything like that, so...
It doesn't
Yeah,
define what the fuck your spirit is.
Okay. Each book has like 2 different definitions of spirit,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and none of them match.
I kind of feel like all
okay.
of World of Darkness, the way I've had it described to me, and I think I said it in an earlier session at one point, it is clown shoes. The entire setting is clown shoes.
Yeah.
Everything is correct. Every conspiracy theory is right. Every religion is correct. Every cult is correct. Every single technophile's fantasy is correct. Every single entity that could exist does, and they all interfere with each other's logic, and somehow the world hasn't ended yet. Except it did that one time, and then they undid it, and then actually that was in a different dimension, and this is a completely different world, and
Wait, so does that mean that in the World of Darkness, the Earth is simultaneously round and flat?
Yes.
Yes.
I actually think so, if I'm not mistaken. There's a thing about that.
Yes.
Also a hypocube.
This is kind of why I preferred Chronicles, because you can just blame the God Machine.
And
like,
and it's also simultaneously a hollow Earth at the same time, and you're on the inside of it, and also not. All of those things at the same time.
Yeah, I still remember playing a Changeling game way back when, where the conceit of it was, none of this makes any fucking sense, let's basically play Shadowrun. And it was great, because we embraced the silliness of it. I got to be Cyclops out of the X-Men, but actually useful. Fought vampires in, like, bomb suits in broad daylight. In a suburban...
Cyclops.
Yeah, I know, but still.
But like, we got to fight in a suburban environment with werewolf Karens who were trying to protect their families, all while vampires are shooting up. It's just crazy shit. Wild shit. Mages showed up. Weird shit happened. That's what World of Darkness, I think, is good at if you're going to go for the silly stuff. When you go for serious, it has to give you a clear idea of what the hell is going on.
Mm-hmm.
The esoterica is the problem, in my opinion. A lot of this stuff is interesting, and it's trying to base itself in real-world belief systems to some extent, but it goes too far into the esoteric end of it, instead of just telling you what the fuck is going on so you can build a game around it.
I actually would say it's even worse than that, because
Okay.
like all of that is true, but you as the storyteller kind of just get to pick and choose whatever the hell you want it to be. And that part is good. The problem is World of Darkness, and they've known it from the beginning, is going to be made up of multiple different settings and different creatures and beings.
Mm-hmm.
But they never put them on the same rule set.
Yeah, it's not cohesive.
Yeah.
The character sheets look incredibly similar, but the mechanics are very different. And trying to translate that just becomes a problem.
I think
They
did a
never.
cross.
Yeah,
They've done one crossover book in Chronicles. I think it was called Contagion or something.
In my Pathfinder society, there was another person that played in there that was a huge fan of vampires whenever it comes to World of Darkness. And I heard a lot about the game from them. I never played myself. They talked about it a lot. They talked about all the different clans, all the different things they could do in it. And I was like, okay, cool. It doesn't sound anything like Mage. Like,
It is not.
mechanically. There's,
No.
like,
It isn't.
no parallel.
It's not.
It is 100% different.
Yeah, the roles are very similar for the basic things you can do as a person that exists in the world. Everything else is clown shoes. No. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
make equivalence work. Celerity alone makes mages obsolete in one-on-one fights unless they're really, really spec'd into certain things.
Not only that,
It's
but so does a
ridiculous.
gun.
Oh, yeah, a gun. Yeah, Eden
Yeah.
picks up a gun and people go, oh shit, he has a gun.
It really does though. Like, thinking about it, a mage that wants to counter a gun is going to have to incur paradox to try to like not get hurt by a gun like 8 times out of
Right.
10. You could make an argument that a life mage could like make their skin chitinous under their clothes and people wouldn't see it, but for like almost everyone, you're going to have to do something to make a bullet hitting you not lethal contradict reality some way.
The only other
The
one,
only-
the only coincidence I think you could do is just like have the gun jam.
Yeah,
have it
stuff like
misfire.
Yeah, that's
Or-
maybe it. That's about it.
If you're
That's
trying to
totally
not be
fine.
shot, I guess you could do maybe like force on the bullet to slow it down,
Mhm.
I
I
guess,
guess, before impact.
or time to fuck with how quickly the bullet is actually
Oh,
operating in
But-
the space around you.
I was planning to try and work towards making a powerful item of
no.
entropy armor.
Entropy
God.
armor, yeah. But
I wanna
the
make a
point
time
being
gun.
that introducing a gun means that one person has to do basically nothing, while the other person has to, on every turn, take into consideration the possibility of immediate destruction. So
Yeah.
they either have to almost guarantee incur some paradox to stop the gun, or the gun just wins. And that's if it works, because it could
Mhm.
always not work or make things even worse if it botches. So
Yeah.
I-
It gets weirder than
Ugh.
that. The
That
book-
was one thing that was really nice about the martial arts, because it's like, yeah, I could just like magic up an attack on you, but I could also literally just punch you and
Yeah.
have no issues whatsoever.
Mhm.
And I'd probably do better than just rolling magic, because like again with like martial arts, Gemma had like an absurd amount of dice that you could just
Yeah.
master.
Now that
martial
I'm
arts
thinking
on
about it, punching people plus life magic is probably just the way to go.
Oh yeah, just
You
do,
can
like-
always just punch someone in the head and then magic them to be unconscious, and it's never gonna look weird.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
actually kind of surprised I've never done that.
Here's a weird one for you. So the book encourages you in a few areas, specifically for combat. It has entire sections on how to combine magic and traditional combat, and it kind of, last time I read it, it kind of throws its hands up and goes, figure it out, I guess. It never once says, by the way, idiot, this is going to incur paradox. Don't do this.
Mhm.
Even though it suggests like powering up your guns to do certain things with forces, or like punching a dude with, I think it also says forces actually. But the point is, forces does a lot of work when it comes to combat. No, it's basically encouraging you to incur paradox for very little gain, unless you're doing something hyper dramatic that will change the situation instantly. If I punch a dude and my intent is to undo his existence, and I have entropy, oh yeah, I'm doing that. But if you're gonna do something like punch him real hard, you might as well do what Kiana's character is doing and just punch him real hard, like as a normal
Well,
person with skills. It's really
That's
weird.
really the point, is that when it comes to paradox, it's talking about all the things that you can do. But it is your responsibility to figure out how to do it and incorporate it in a way that minimizes or eliminates the paradox.
Mhm.
Right. You got to do a magic trick to trick the universe into thinking it's cool.
Yeah.
But there's a part of that that feels like tension that is unnecessary for a game that's fun.
Not to mention, there's some stuff which you traditionally associate with magic that you really can't do without it being like paradoxical just by its mere nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, or-
Everything that Keanu's character did, every single thing. God damn it.
I
Everything that
did do
Ethan
a
did.
lot.
Yeah,
My
pretty much
character was constantly
everything.
trying to do
Ethan-
instant transmission shit, and it's like you can't. You just can't.
No,
yeah, it just
I-
it has to be paradoxical unless you're gonna do like a full-on magic act where you're like, all right, I put a cloth over this thing and then a cloth over this thing and an alakazam and boom, it's over here. How does he do it? Like,
Which is an
Now-
instrument the game has.
but that
Yeah.
only works like on a stage. Like, how do you explain that happening? I don't know, with lightning outside a window and coming into the
there
hospital
was no
building.
way to make that not
yeah, no.
paradoxical.
Right.
There was
that was
no
fucking
way.
neat. That was fucking neat, though.
But
I
it
mean,
was
yeah.
it was a
Cool, it
cool
was-
moment.
It
That
was
was
a
probably
cool
the coolest thing we did.
Yes.
But I think
And
ID
it-
hit on a big
oh.
thing where the magic is the cool thing that you want to do,
Not
but doing it is more often punishing to your character than not. The game's
Mhm.
rules make it seem like you want it to be. You want to use magic as little as possible as a mage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
It really
don't-
wants you to. It wants you to take a gun or a knife or something and have that as your primary combat option. It wants you to never ever use correspondence
Well-
for its intended purpose.
I mean, a
the-
cleaver works really well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the-
it does.
The other point is it's not supposed to be a combat heavy system. The combat is
I
supposed
know.
to be tertiary and the magic is supposed to be for puzzle solving. But that doesn't mean that combat doesn't come up. And every time I've had to like pore over the rules. And I don't think a single time I got it right because they're so fucking incomprehensible.
I
Like-
have
Yeah.
multiple complaints about the combat system, but
Mhm.
about paradox, I like the concept of paradox.
Mhm.
I like the idea of miscasting. I like the idea of wild magic.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of systems that do it well. And the core idea of paradox, where the spell goes awry and it does something that you didn't necessarily expect, that's cool. But I think it feels like too much of a threat in Mage. But I guess it's mostly because of where it's coming from. Because it feels like it's less coming from like, oh, I did a whoopsie and miscasted and I'm just like bad at magic. And it's more of like the universe literally punishing you for the thing you're trying to do.
Now,
I guess
but
that different
yeah.
approach gives it a different connotation.
thematically, that's exactly what the system seems to be going for. But the problem is, the fun factor evaporates when you. Okay, best example I could think of. Every single time I wanted Ethan to do a portal thing, that is paradox worthy every single time. And yet, correspondence heavily encourages, through its own text about how it works, for you to try to do portal shit. Or like Goku instant transmissioning in terms of what you could visually describe it as. But there's no way to do that without paradox. If you can, we're not even talking like sleepers, like normal people noticing that it happens. The universe will bitch slap you for even trying, but the book says this is what you can do with correspondence. So it's trapping you in certain ways. You want to make a fire with forces? Cool, explain that shit. You want to do anything with spirit? That's weird. Everything's weird.
and
It's
just-
that's a big
it wants-
point. Is I think they should have went more into the sleepers than
Yeah.
they did, where the paradox happens a lot when sleepers are
Yeah.
around and people that don't
Yes.
know, and that's why
Unless
you have to
the
keep this all
universe-
secretive. And
Yeah.
then when we're in our in a cave fighting like a spirit, we shouldn't have to worry as much about that part of paradox because there's
Yeah.
no one around.
Right.
Yeah, if we're to
Talking-
work with. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
Okay. Talking about correspondence, though, in my head, I always associate correspondence with conjuration, which is a basic form of magic and everything. It's like one of the types of magic, and it feels like most of the things that you could do with conjuration, you just can't do it with paradox. Even like portals, like ID was talking about, but I'm also thinking about like summoning items, like summoning like a creature to fight for you. There's no way that would fly. Just
Yeah.
like summoning like a wolf or something.
Yeah,
Like a tiger
can't be
shows up,
summoner,
no.
very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking like I was even thinking of weirder esoteric stuff to go for at one point. Like, okay, I want to use correspondence. How can I control someone else's limbs to do what I'm doing, but somewhere else? Or fucking with somebody again, combat's what I think of because RPGs, but
Mhm.
like trying to remotely control something so I don't have to be there to deal with the thing and I get to be the operator sitting in our home base. That'd be kind of neat. But the problem is the way the system works, I'm incurring paradox every time I do something like that, almost certainly. And so I can't, even if the entire team bands together in one big spellcasting kumbaya little circle, you still have a pretty high chance that something's going to go wrong. The game doesn't want you to be a mage, it feels
And
like.
I
Yeah.
will also bear some of the responsibility of this being difficult because one, this is obviously the first time I've story told in World of Darkness, so I'm sure a lot of the roughness just comes from that. And two, I guess as sort of an addendum under that, the way I was running it didn't really lend, I think, to the strengths of the system because reflecting on me playing in the past, a lot of what happened was us sitting in the sanctum where you have less penalties for paradox because that's the point of having a sanctum is you're kind of hidden away from the sleepers and the forces of reality and doing most of your big casts there and then going out in the world and hopefully having to avoid doing any magic while you're out and about. Whereas here there wasn't like a whole lot of preparation in the mansion, knocking out all of your spell casting to do things for later, because in this system, doing a spell that you use now and then save for later requires time and at a pretty reasonably high level in order to effectively use it. And they want anyone who's participating in it to have at least one dot in that sphere. So if we wanted to do that as we did in the campaign I played forever ago, everyone would have to be like a level 3 time mage to do all their preparations ahead of time. And that's stupid. That's like half of everyone's character just being used for prep magic. And I don't want that.
Actually, it's level 4, not even level,
Level
3.
4? Oh my god.
Wow.
So
Jesus.
so try.
I was planning on doing that with, cookies of good fortune and like teas or soda of bad luck that I could hand out to people.
God damn it.
So having like
You know-
bottle magic on hand so that you could have like a correspondence spell set up ahead of time and then you could, unleash it later where you've already set things in motion and the only way you would incur paradox is if a sleeper saw it and it wasn't coincidental in any way. And it seems like in this system that's just not there.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like it.
Jump in and give some positive though for you, Eoti. I really enjoyed how you changed the system and like the ways you did paradox as opposed to how they did it, like turning Kiana's legs into rabbit legs and stuff. I thought that it fit really well, and I think that made it a lot better in the game.
I liked it.
I will also say one thing. One of the most boring things about mage campaigns that I've seen is when everyone just kind of sanctum snipes. So I have enjoyed it, like having everyone be out and about instead.
I've never heard that term, but it makes so much sense. Sanctum sniping.
I think I think it's good to have the option of either having like the prepared casting, like in the Sanctum, as well as having the spontaneous casting, because there's perks on both sides. Being prepared beforehand is nice, it's safe, but then also you have to have what you need. And if something comes up that you don't have a solution to, it's like, shrug, I guess I've got nothing. But on the other hand, it's like spontaneous, it's like you can choose whatever tool you want at this moment. It's just a little bit more risky.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think Mage is a really good system for homebrewing.
Yeah.
It has a very nice core, but you need to
that's
homebrew
tons.
it. Like, the defense rules irritate me so much.
Yeah. Once I read them at least 6 times, and I still could not tell you exactly how it works and run it with confidence. I can't.
Yeah. No matter like how I tried to run it through my mind, it's like, this doesn't sound right. This isn't like, this makes no sense to me. Why would you just?
If you're getting attacked, you're kind of screwed. If you're getting attacked by multiple people, you're basically
screwed.
dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rules as written, you aren't supposed to be able to defend and attack in the same turn. What they want you to do, after reading it again, the last time we had a discussion after the fight with Morgan,
Oh dear God.
I read what's supposed to happen is you re-roll initiative after every round. Because what they expect you to do is that the people that rolled well on initiative at the beginning would be the attackers, and people with bad initiative would have to defend. And so if you use your action to defend earlier in the round, you basically don't get to do anything on your turn. But with the hope being that on the next round, you might roll initiative better, and then you'll be the attacker. But then obviously, if somebody has really good initiative, let alone magic that gives them initiative, you're just going to be constantly in a defense position against them, or they're just going to be in a dominating initiative position constantly.
Yeah.
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 The
And
thing
that's
I've
where
always-
splitting your actions
I-
comes in.
I
The
feel
thing
like no matter what, if you're being attacked, you should be given the opportunity to defend yourself. It doesn't matter what you had already done before. Like that feels like common sense to me. Like you're not going to just stand there and let yourself get punched because it's like, oh, I already acted, so like I can't do anything right now. No.
The most common thing I've heard people say is just grab the combat rules from New World of Darkness and just use those instead.
They are pretty nice. New World of Darkness, while I absolutely hate what they did to Vampire,
Oh, I think everyone does.
it was actually very good in terms of their rules. And I do actually like the New World Mage as well. I feel like what they did to the spheres, how they redefined spheres, worked really well.
How long ago did that come out?
2011, I think?
Oh shit. Well, this is the 20th anniversary edition. When did this come out?
I think it was around the same time.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Okay then.
Yeah,
'Cause
'cause it went New World of Darkness, then they
2015.
figured, well, you'll just keep making stuff for the old thing, and they rebranded the new one into Chronicles. So they're just two different systems now.
Huh.
Ugh.
Mage the Ascension is 1993.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's probably when the first
and
one.
Mage, yeah, that's the first one.
2015
Mage
was
the
the 20th
Awakening.
edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the whole point of talking about this first is just to
2005.
let you guys know that I know we discussed some of this on stream during the games, that, you know, whenever something came up, we would have to look things up, and you may have noticed how difficult it was to even find key terms and some mechanics in there. But for every minute we discussed this on stream was probably about 30 minutes of me trying to research it and understand things in the background and building around it. And it was just incredibly frustrating. And there's not really a way to soften that blow. It's just, it was really hard to hammer everything out and try to make it work mechanically.
Yeah.
I
I'll
think
give
you
a comparison.
succeeded more than failed. I had a lot of fun with a lot of the
Mhm.
stuff we did. I think the bug spirit in the basement is still probably my favorite mini arc we had.
Yeah.
I feel bad that I missed that.
It was really atmospheric, and I feel like really well done.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. I will say, Eoti, I want to clarify. You have done a wonderful job with this campaign. You have been inspiring as a GM. I love the dynamics you've made between characters, and like you turned the things that in other campaigns would be the boring, dumb, like downtime stuff, and you made that the highlight of this campaign in a very, very good way. And that is inspiring to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I guess since we're now talking about the characters, why don't we talk about things in the campaign now? Unless anyone wants to get things off their chest about the system, because I feel that too.
I'll give you a final thought on the system. I think what you said about the looking at the book and taking at least 30 minutes to figure out what the hell is going on per session, that led me to thinking about. I've played a lot of RPG systems over time. I've played D&D 3.5, technically 3rd actually at first, up through 5th edition. I have played Fate. I have played GURPS once, which was weird because I wasn't used to it. I played, of all things, Besom, Big Eyes, Small Mouth. No, it is not BDSM. Yes, I know what channel I'm on. But I've played a couple editions of that. Now I've played Mage, and I have played some World of Darkness games before. The biggest issue that happened here is that the game system may or may not have actually been tuned to what we collectively wanted to do with it. So it led to confusion because, yeah, if we have to look up specifics about magic specifically all the time, and we also have to look up what the hell other rules are all the time, you just slow things down. Playing Big Eyes Small Mouth recently, and the original version of the system, the Tri-Stat system, which I have my own problems with, but whatever. How many times do we have to look up actual information about how to play the game? Per session, how much time do we spend? Maximum 10 minutes.
Say,
It was
not
just-
really much because it pretty much all flowed together. It all
Exactly.
used the same core
Mhm.
mechanics.
Yes. When you look at systems like that are modular and based on the idea of, okay, you want to make a game. Okay, you want it to be about mages. Let's just stick to that as an example. You can do so much that is described using the mechanics. Bezim I just bring up because you could literally just build a character where it's like, you have a projectile attack. That's what they have, is a ranged attack. Okay, what does it do? You describe it in the text. What you want it to be on a fire-based thing? You want to cast fireball? Okay, give it some extra modifiers and variables that say this is a ranged attack that deals damage over time and attacks in an area of effect. And you build it super fast. You never have to look it up and go, how do I cast a fireball again? You go, I do fireball. And if you ever want to improvise, the system allows for that. That's just one, but if you spend less time looking through the book in a game, I feel like you're doing better. It's not the fault of the DM or GM or storyteller if the book is written in a way where you can't figure out what the hell you're trying to do within like a minute. I think that you did what you could with the material. And I applaud you for giving it a shot because I felt bad being the catalyst for a lot of those questions because I was the dumbass who picked correspondence as my
You're
focus.
not a dumbass, please.
You aren't. You aren't. You
I wanted to
had
play-
such a good concept. I loved what you were doing with the character. It's just,
Yeah,
And
I appreciate you trying is what I'm trying to say. And I guess this is a good segue to characters because it sounds like we're kind of going there.
yeah, and I would give any advice to somebody looking to run a mage campaign to really just focus on, and I'm gonna dance while I say this, but look at the way that they line out the magic, and then
look
just
at
be
that, look at
prepared
that.
to homebrew everything. Just run the rules as it
Mhm.
feels, and you're probably gonna do better than the rules as written. So please.
yeah.
Please do not get hung up on the rules like I do because I'm a very systemic person. I want to have hard codified rules and in the background. And you're fine, Lost in Time. I want the redeems on. We're having fun here. It's not a role-playing session. But yeah, just I'm a kind of person that wants to have rules codified. And then after our streams in the group chat, we were trying to make hard-coded rules for everything. And honestly, just it wasn't working. So that's my advice to you out there that want to run a mage campaign. Look at the rules, sort of take what you want, and then fill in the rest on your own, and you're probably going to be better off.
Or use a
Yeah.
different
Mhm.
version of Mage.
Or a different system. And
Mhm.
just use the esoterica surrounding it.
I do feel like it's got a good flavor to it. Like
Mhm.
the story, the ideas around Paradox, like we said before, all are good ideas. They just either didn't do it well or didn't make the book understandable on how it should be done.
Yeah. I will say, one of the most valuable skills that you can develop as a GM is just seeing, like, I need to make a rule for a thing, and just making that on the fly and being like, okay, this is how it's done. Word of
Mhm.
God. This is how it goes.
Yeah. At some points, you just have to admit that. But okay.
Yeah.
In that case, let's move on to questions about characters. And if any of you want to go first, go ahead. If anyone in chat has questions about the characters in the campaign, you want to ask them specifically or ask me for any of the NPCs or things like that, then let's go ahead and talk about that.
It's a shame that Nicholas was never added as a cannibal.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys?
Wait, what?
I'm not just a cannibal.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
even human. I'm a homunculus.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, I didn't know. I
Yeah, I
didn't
didn't
fucking
even
know
know
that
that.
one. What?
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas was made in his dad's basement as
Yeah.
like a science magic experiment. And the reason he has to eat human flesh is that his body degrades and he goes insane otherwise because he's not actually human.
What the fuck?
Yes.
I
So
know.
here, let's
I
let's talk
remember
about
that.
this.
Character creation.
This is a good launching point for a couple things. So first of all, thank you for the follow, Emma. Mwah. Appreciate that. Welcome on in. So Gregory Bissett, Nicholas's father, is a life mage, and I believe, Carter, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. You told me not to explain why his dad did this, and that was going to be something you would figure out later. So I'm not gonna.
Nicholas not knowing that he's a homunculus, he thought he had some sort of weird disease
Mhm,
or genetic disorder, and that's what caused his mother to die as well.
mhm.
And that he was going to find out over time that this is what happened. I didn't actually have the reason why his dad did this. I had Eoti come up with it on her own so we could kind of discover it.
Wait, hold on. I just
Go ahead.
remind me. Your dad said that your mom had the same disease, right?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Does that mean he also made a homunculus wife? Or is that just bullshit?
Should
Well,
we ask?
the thing,
Okay.
This is surname von Iceburn?
the
I
thing
was gonna
is,
say, was she named Galatea by any fucking chance? Jesus
Ilias
Christ.
Wheel?
yes.
Are we doing that?
Basically,
Oh, no.
Gregory Bissett was a very lonely person, and he
Oh,
couldn't
no.
find
Oh my
someone, and so he started working on homunculi so that he could have the family that he always wanted. And the Bissett family was rather big, and they had a medical past and stuff, and it's not like people in the family had a hard time finding their love interests and continuing the family, but he did, and he became the sole heir to the Bissett family, essentially, and he needed to make a family to continue it on. So he built a wife using his understanding of life magic, and he only had a little bit of mind. Here, let me pull up. I don't think I actually had it in the NPC list what he had, but essentially, Greg, he had life and mind magic, but that wasn't enough to make a person because you also need spirit for their soul, and so he had to get an associate to help him with it, and they had some issues with a couple of their first attempts, but then he eventually got one stable enough, and that became Nicholas's mom and his wife. And they wanted to have a child, but after a while, it turned out that they weren't able to have a viable offspring. And it also became apparent after a couple years that she wasn't as stable as they thought, and she started deteriorating. But over that time, he and his associate had gotten better at making these homunculi, and the ones that he had been making were for the associate instead of himself, because at that point he was pretty, as with most mage relationships, it's a give-take thing. He wasn't getting free help from his friend. The idea was he would get a family out of it, and this person would get basically slaves. And he was willing to make that sacrifice. And that's what Gregory's been doing this whole time, going overseas and working for this associate to help build homunculi.
Okay.
And one of those was the one that Nicholas worked on at the cosmetic place.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay.
So
Screaming externally and internally. Oh god.
So that
You
one
know-
was one that went kind of wrong, and they needed to have it fixed. And the associate was basically upset with how it turned out. So they sent him to get fixed by a mage, and Greg didn't tell it was his own son that fixed it. But that was supposed to, he was trying to throw you a hint at what he was doing over there. But there were some botched rolls on that one, so you didn't get a whole lot of the deep info in her mind, and instead you got paradoxed into also being a bimbo.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though, is that that makes total sense now, that it wasn't just like, guess what, paradox bitch slapped you. It's more the universe is kind of setting you to what your dad's actually doing with I feel all sorts of gross now.
So
Gregory Bissat's middle name wouldn't be Pygmalion, would it?
no.
He's pulling that.
Jeez.
He's pulling that shit. Ah, God, I feel gross.
So Greg was
That's
trying
really
to
good
build
writing.
his family and try to make a lasting, lineage for him. And he wanted to make a son that could have viable children if he were to get that. Oh, thank you for the head pats and the goo. While we talk about dark, destructive things. And what he ended up finding out was if you continuously feed the homunculi human flesh, it can stabilize it for longer. And he didn't find this out until the wife had reached an unsustainable point and she pretty much passed on. But he now had Gregory, and at this point he didn't want to build anymore because, the veneer of having his homegrown family had lost all of its luster. And so now he was just going to raise Nicholas and pour all the love that he could into him. But he was now tied up with this associate and pretty much forced to work with him as part of their deal. So he constantly got pulled away from his work to go help him. So that's basically the background of the recent Bissets, the most current ones.
Before you clarified about the reason of why Greg was going out on business and everything, I had this very disturbing thought of oh, you're telling me that Greg had the assistance of someone with spirit spheres? Huh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't suppose that a certain bank owner helped.
No.
Which would,
That'd be crazy.
Someone whose name starts with a J?
Yeah.
Nope. I was gonna have that be a little plot hook for the future. Is at some point, Greg was going to try to completely cut ties with this associate, and they were probably going to try to bring them and their army of slaves to come and drag him away from Pleasant Valley and do work for him. So it was going to be interesting. You were going to have to fight basically a bimbo harem of madness.
I'm sorry. That sentence can't be taken. Oh,
jeez.
I am very
God, it's like
disappointed.
camping all over
get
again.
this.
It is a perfect thing in World of Darkness to have to fight a bimbo harem.
That sounds
I'm very disappointed that we lost the chance to complete this task.
That would have been so good.
I would have had mixed feelings on that.
Okay. I have a question now.
Go ahead.
So, what was Margaret actually up to?
Oh,
Was Nicholas actually justified? Were we all justified in our feelings about Margaret, or was she secretly doing the right thing?
Before I spill the beans, you should know that in the World of Darkness, everybody has their own motivations to do stuff. So whether or not you think she's good or evil is going to depend on how you think this project. So let's talk about Margaret. When she was younger, in her early 20s, she was with a group of people just getting into sort of network technology. At the time, it was the 1950s, and phone lines were being put up all over, and people were using phones. They were very into that technology, and they were trying to do their own things with radio and telephones, and they were like a little band of like radio hackers. And their idea was to spread knowledge of magic and try to get people, participate in the Ascension War and get people on their side and awakened. And of course, this is about the same time the technocracy was starting to come to power, was in the 50s and 60s as technology improved. The thing that people point to as technocracy controlling is things like Star Trek, where they wanted people to believe in technology over magic and put their faith in that. And so Margaret's little band of cohorts got taken out by the technocracy. Their little like hacker radio and all of their telephone work, all of that got destroyed, and she was the sole survivor. And the only reason they got found out is one of her associates made a flaw at some point and basically doxed themselves. They left a back door open. It's a detail, I haven't like fully fleshed it out, but that's essentially what happened. One of her associates caused the fall of the group and got almost all of them killed but her. And so afterwards, she decided that she wanted to fight the technocracy, and she couldn't trust anyone else to help her with it. She needed to do this alone. She also knew that things had to be kept incredibly secret because as the technocracy has grown in power, their ability to snoop around and find magic has gotten really good. So starting in the 60s, when she was roughly 30, she wait, does that add up? About 40, 70? Yeah, she's like she's older now. She's around like 70-ish, 80-ish, but she's a mage, so, you know, she has connections to keep herself younger. She assumed a new identity. Margaret wasn't her real name, but since this hasn't gone along, I didn't bother with making her true name. She assumed the identity. She started working at the bank in this no-name town, and she's secretly been behind the scenes trying to run the town into the ground so that it can basically be a quiet ghost town where she could do her work. And that way there's no news, no people here really to, if things do get strange or weird, to be believed. They'll just look like, you know, redneck yokels out in the middle of nowhere complaining about UFOs. She wanted to keep things secret because her big plan was to make a magic internet, and she was going to be the host for it. But that would obviously, she was going to have connections worldwide and be a hub for it. But that would be a massive amount of magical energy, essentially, and that'd be picked up easy.
The ghost in the machine.
So she spent literal decades in this town building up wards to and what's it called to hide the magic. There's a term in the book for it. Yeah, thank you. Brain farting. But she spent decades putting up wards and blocking out vision of any magical things going on here. And only in the past couple decades did she actually get to work on building the magic internet. So beneath the bank... Veils. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So underneath the bank, there is a basically entire warehouse worth of inscribed runes that help connect to her little thumb drives. She has magic thumb drives, and any computer she plugs that into has a connection to that thing beneath the bank. And she's able to relay information between the computer and back. It's encrypted in her own special technology, so even if the technocracy got a hold of it, it should be encrypted and keep them from being able to backtrace it. And because nobody else has had their hands on it, nobody else knows anything about it. And the only time people have come down... Oh, here's the thing about Margaret that maybe you've picked up on. Her focus is contracts.
Yep. She's trying to out technocracy the technocracy.
Exactly. She wants to make it so that she can subvert the actual technology and instead replace it with magic technology.
She's trying to make the Guilty Gear universe. Shit, I want to see the end version of that.
You know what? I'm actually kind of on Margaret's side now. A little bit.
Yeah.
This is kind of rad.
She
minus the fact that she's trying to ruin the lives of a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah,
that part I don't like at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, but I get the end goal.
But
I'm thinking my character kind of had a bit of semi-focus on contracts and runes, so they probably would have got on.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck didn't she just do this, like, in the middle of a desert, or, like,
it must be the
woods
ley line.
somewhere?
It must be the ley line under the bank. It must be particularly powerful.
Yeah,
there's the other thing my character is coming to go investigate.
She does need to have a constant source of quintessence to make it so that the paradox possibility is so much lower, because you have to imagine she's not doing this with other people, and so she's got to draw on her own abilities. And another fact, do you guys remember there were a couple times you ran into Margaret and she she appeared slightly different. Do you remember that?
I remember she had that like real like smoker voice that one time.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, that was very confusing. I thought that was you putting on a voice and then deciding you didn't like it.
It was, if you see in the higher level correspondence, you can co-locate and be in multiple places at once.
Oh motherfucker, she was doing that.
So Margaret in the town is different from the Margaret in the project room. She was co-locating permanently.
Oh my god.
She was always somewhat drained of her magic abilities because she was always co-locating so that she could have herself on the surface, making public appearances, keeping the town functional without being, fully operational. Meanwhile, she was pouring the rest of her magic abilities into building up this magic internet thing underneath. So when Josephine started making problems on the surface with the spirit, she not only didn't have a lot of knowledge of spirit, but she also was pretty drained working on this project, and anything she would have to do would take away from that, sort of unstabilize it, while she had to do things on the surface as Surface Margaret. This other Margaret, the one that was in slippers and a bathrobe and basically run rugged, had been working nonstop for like 3 decades down there on this project. And
Jeez.
anytime she had to, correspond and make an appearance on that one, you can tell that she was run ragged. But that's what Margaret was up to. She wanted to completely subvert the technocracy by creating a alternate internet that could connect mages around the world and let them share information without the technocracy learning about it, so that they could better coordinate. Because anything mages wanted to do worldwide would require so much work, and to keep it under wraps, because at that magnitude, the technocracy would learn about it almost immediately.
He was trying to create an artificial noosphere. What the fuck? That's me.
Terranet from
It's
Dresden.
amazing how if she was just open about that, we would be so much more on her side. But I
Yeah.
entirely understand why she wasn't.
Yeah,
Why
because she
did
can't.
she just-
But anybody knowing it risks its discovery.
Exactly.
No, I know, but like the fact that she didn't tell us meant that we were all suspecting that she was doing weird shit, and we would eventually fight that until she told us what she was doing. In which case we'd go, "Why didn't you tell us? We would have helped you."
And
You
she
know we would have been against her the entire way through the bank, down into the vault, until eventually she might have said something, and then we're like, "Oh, wait a minute." And
Man, I
guess
was
we're in the
willing to
wrong.
be friendly with her.
Ethan
And-
would totally have assisted.
And the problem being that, of course, if it did leak out, the entire her life's work would basically be ruined. And also,
Oh, absolutely.
she would had to have guilted herself quite a bit about the lives that she's ruined along the way, let alone maybe people that have died. And in pursuit of this,
Not to mention the severe trauma of like already like entrusting somebody with this kind of work and then everything being blown up.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gosh.
So she, again, you can say that she was evil because she definitely did evil things, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But at the same time, as being in World of Darkness, I wanted to create a character whose motivations were good, but the pursuit of them led to her doing some very unsavory things. And you all being there and posing a threat to create a magical disturbance that possibly her little bubble could not contain, obviously throws all of that, 30 years of her life away if the technocracy shows up and she has to dismantle the whole thing to keep them from getting a hold of it, let alone possibly dying.
Again, I understand the character motivation. At the same time, if she just fucking told us, Ethan would have actively stopped causing trouble and gone, okay, how do we actually expand this project? Like, I'm gonna stop fucking with things in the town. If this is the plan and the town's gonna fall apart because it's kind of already fallen apart, we can try to save it. Or, hey, idea, what if we expanded this little enterprise of yours? Makes sense. We could work.
Oh, wait a minute. Is what Josephine said totally bunk then?
About
Because
what?
she was convinced that there was something under the bank.
Yeah, there
literally
is.
was
something-
something under the bank.
Well,
That-
I guess there was something under the bank, but she painted it as more like a
sinister.
Evil, sinister. Ooh.
Well, yeah, because for the same reason you all did, Margaret is not a likable person. She's a cunt.
Nope.
And so
True.
I think it's only reasonable that you would dislike her. And that's why I'm never going to push back against what Cariter, let alone Nicholas, was saying, that she's evil and she deserves a comeuppance. Because she did, I mean, she was openly threatening you guys with death. She was incredibly reserved. She fucked over the lives of people in the town. Like, yeah, unlikable. But her ultimate end goal would have possibly put a big thorn in the side of the technocracy, if not help bring it down and bring the Ascension War back into the control of the disparates instead of the Council of Nine instead of the technocracy. So
Well, I've got to say that Nicholas would still. He's not the ends justify the means type of person.
mhm.
He would not have been okay with what she had been doing to the town and the people in it, no matter what she thought the end results might lead to.
But I would say, since we're being an open book, after you guys would have done the little cave arc, I think she would have slipped you a little bit more knowledge about what's going on down there. Because after everything gets cleared up with the latent spiritual problems in town, she would have more reason to not only trust you, since you upheld your part of the bargain, but also kind of quieted the things she was concerned about, that she was getting stressed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which I guess
So
we could talk about that.
Yeah, should we move on to Josephine and the demon that was like
I suppose we
possessing
should,
her?
yeah.
So in order to talk about Josephine, we're gonna have to talk about Henrietta, the witch that was out in
Yes.
the woods.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that makes
Was
sense.
the priest evil?
Again, it's gonna be
It depends.
it's gonna be
apparently.
complicated. So let's start with Henrietta. Henrietta had a troubled childhood. She was immediately at a young age awakened to her latent spiritual abilities, and she became aware of the different forest spirits around Pleasant Valley and how they tended to not only the fields but also the woods and whatnot. And she got really friendly with them. And I wouldn't say ancestor, but I guess that's the best word for it, of the Besets, kind of took her in because they don't know what happened to her parents. She's just kind of orphaned and was left in town. Like one of those doorstep baby situations. So the Besets took her in and noticed that she was a mage, and these Beset ancestors were also mages, so they were able to understand what was going on. Father Morris was the son of Thomas Morris, the one that you read in the book that was a world gallivanting monster hunter. And a little trivia for those of you out there. The reason I picked Morris was in the Castlevania series. There was a time when the Belmonts fell out of favor with the vampire hunter whip, and the Morris family were the ones that took up vampire hunting from them. So
the whip disliked them?
Yeah, they basically got cursed. The Belmont family got cursed after one of the games, and they could no longer use the whip. And so a different family took it up and took on the vampire hunting mantle for at least a few games in the series. So the Morrises, to allude to that, he was a vampire hunter / monster hunter, and they had secret monster hunting things. And so Father Morris was a son to this guy, and so he had some predilections about finding monsters in the world, kind of a Don Quixote character where there weren't a lot of monsters around, so as a righteous
this is going.
man of faith,
See.
he would go finding monsters to hunt. And in this case, Henrietta had grown up. She was sort of a loner in that she would spend more time with spirits than she would with people. And the Besets moved her out to her own little quiet place on the outskirts of town where they had this cabin set up for family excursions, because they were rather wealthy even at the time, being medical professionals and whatnot. And so she just sort of lived out in the cabin, and she would eventually learn to befriend the spirits in the woods. And she kind of pulled them away from their duties of caring for the farms and the woods and whatnot. And they just wanted to spend time with her because she was one of the few things that actually cared and protected for them. And she ended up having all these spirits live with her. And she did that with even more than just forest spirits. There's lots of other spirits and fae and whatnot out there.
She was the crazy cat lady of spirit.
Exactly.
No.
As with anything in Mage, if you can think it, it exists somewhere. And the problem became that there was a spirit that was a spirit of fear that...
One in the book.
Yes, the one in the book wanted to gain power, but it was cowardly and small, and it couldn't actually do anything. And even though it was a spirit of fear that fed on fear, it itself was completely engulfed in fear. It was scared of other things too. And so when she took it in and she started to care for it, it started to grow in power because it lost its own fear and started commanding fear from other things. And so one thing you can do with spirit magic is let the spirits sort of possess you. It's one of the things that you can do in I think sphere 4 or 5, is you can gain power from letting spirits possess you. So say there's there's something that was in battle, and you could let it possess you, and it might increase your strength or give you certain skills like martial arts or something for the duration of it possessing you.
If I got an additional dot in spirits,
Could have been possessed by Bruce Lee. Yeah.
I could have let Thaumacool possess me.
Yeah. You could have done a lot of that. So she would do that with the forest spirits, let them possess her body so that they could have an attachment to the material world, let them feel the things she feels. It was just her way of communicating with them, and it was always a very pleasant experience with her. And she didn't know that this spirit was a demon. There wasn't like, a sign on it. It's not like she could just put a magnifying glass on it and be like, oh, this is a demon. But at some point, she felt comfortable enough with it to let it possess her, and then it just sort of took her for a ride, and she wasn't able to control it anymore, and it took over. And that's what happened when it started going around. It realized that she could do harm to people, and oh my gosh, there'd be a huge payoff of fear. But then it quickly found that it could get more fear out of the threat of death, let alone watching someone else get killed. That was just like the highest amount of fear. And so for a good week or so, it was going around killing people and trying to harvest as much fear. And as more of the murders mounted up, the entire town was pouring out fear. And it got more and more powerful as the days went on. And then that's when Father Morris had to step in, and he got a hold of the church, got a exorcist to come to town, essentially someone who can fight monsters, and using his own father's weaponry and this exorcist, they decided to go monster hunting for Henrietta. And what ended up happening is Father Morris went to her cabin, and the exorcist chased her away. But the townspeople had shown up, and so what Father Morris did was put on a show and burned down her cottage, saying that she was still in it, so that they wouldn't know the executioner had gone off chasing after her. And so everything about burning down the cabin was to stop the fear and make people believe that the problem had been solved, because they had figured out that fear was the motivator for this demon in their pursuit of it. And so he essentially got the people to put all of their anger towards burning down this cabin and getting it out of their system, so hopefully they'd be pacified. Meanwhile, Henrietta, possessed by this demon, ran to one of the places that had some of the most residual fear left over, which was the mines, because the mines had cave-ins, and if you've ever been down deep in a cave and have the lights go out, it's a pretty scary place to be. And it sort of recluded into the caves, and so the executioner wasn't able to exactly find it and get rid of it. He instead used his abilities of spirit to try to trap it. And the way that he did that was by sealing off a section of the cave by increasing the gauntlet as the demon tried to step sideways with Henrietta's spirit ability. So if you let's talk about, I know this is dumping a whole lot at once, and I'm sorry I'm not giving you guys edge room to talk, but whenever you step sideways into the spirit realm, you have to pierce the gauntlet. And there's something in the book and in the experience I had playing a long time ago that if you try to pierce the gauntlet and fail, you can get trapped in it. You can get stuck there where time doesn't change, your spirit doesn't change. You're just trapped between planes of existence. And so what he did, as she tried to step sideways, he realized what was going on and then conjured as much spirit power as he could to reinforce the gauntlet. And so essentially, the demon-possessed Henrietta got trapped in the gauntlet, in the cave. And now this demon spirit was sort of stuck between planes in the cave in Pleasant Valley. And so when he came back, he reported to Father Morris that, took care of the demon. Demon's been killed. It's been no problem there. Father Morris didn't know about this either, so he continued on as usual. But problems started to arise in the cave a couple decades later. A couple more cave-ins, especially near that place, and people getting really scared as their fear kind of took over them. And it wasn't long before the mine was closed down. And the gauntlet, over time, has thinned out down there, and it's getting close to the time when the demon would be released. Now that brings us to the present with Josephine. Henrietta's spirit, trapped with that demon, was also still affected by her avatar. Henrietta had an avatar because she was a mage, but avatars want to exist with a mage in the world and not, between worlds, that having their body kind of stuffed in a side dimension. And so it essentially got reincarnated while she still somewhat existed. So what happened is the demon-tainted soul of Henrietta was reincarnated into Josephine.
Oh, okay.
So that's who I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
Excuse me, what now?
interesting.
Oh.
And so when Josephine was born, she was pretty much born as a second Henrietta. Again, awakened at a very young state, extreme spirit magic right out the gates, as well as some mind magic and other things. And she started interacting with spirits around town. And because her spirit was so similar to Henrietta's, a lot of those spirits recognized her. And it started to froth up the spirit magic in Pleasant Valley at a really rapid rate, to the point where Gregory and Margaret had to take care of it, because even though this child wasn't directly causing the spirits to do anything, they all wanted their friend back, and they sensed it in her. And, all of those spirits that had basically made promises to be with her wanted to come in and be with her. And it was causing problems. And so even though Henrietta wasn't that much of a problem child, she just ended up in trouble all the time because she was hanging out with spirits, and spirits were causing problems in town, and she always seemed to be at the center of problems. And then that led to her being sort of a punk, because didn't matter what she did, she would always be getting in trouble. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what ended up happening, she had a little band of cohorts, and because she was so spiritually attuned and she believed so fervently in her own magic, it she became sort of like a cult leader to them, and they became aware of their own magic and started looking into things, like their own ability to do stuff, which is what led to, what was his name? The one that you guys, was it Hunter?
I think it was Hunter.
Hmm.
The one with the bugs.
Yeah, the bug guy. What was it? Dallas.
Dallas.
Dallas Folan. So with Dallas, he was somewhat capable of doing spiritual journeys too. He was able to do things like go outside of his body, but he was only able to do it on hard drugs. And he ended up dropping out of school and just hanging out with Josephine all the time because he had been basically just wanted her as a conduit for his own magic abilities. And essentially at one point he had a really bad overdose and just sort of went spiritual journeying, and they lost track of him because he stepped sideways and they couldn't find him again. And even though Josephine has a lot of spirit magic and could try to track him down, they couldn't find him. And it turns out he got sort of stuck in the spirit realm and OD'd in what would later be in the material world where the Bassett estate was, because he was sort of drawn to it. It was just, the Bassetts had always had some sort of mage connection, and they're about being doctors and stuff. So you can imagine on the spiritual side of things, their manner and stuff would be a very healing and calm place, as that they sort of bleed into each other. And that was just one of her cohorts. Another one was going to be a the typical large basement dwelling neckbeard, and he just became friends with her because she could actually everything away, and he really liked that. And so his spirit ended up becoming doing things with puppets, is probably the best way of putting it, where he could take flowers and plants and sort of create puppets out of it and then manipulate people, because he himself is a paper tiger. He couldn't really hurt anything. And since he thinks himself a badass, he called himself the Omen.
Oh, so he was the Omen.
The Omen?
Yeah. So he would puppet things and try to manipulate people, especially if he thought it would get back at the people that have messed with Josephine in this little group. And
he made that monster in the hospital?
He made the monster. He made that because another one of their group, his name was going to be something like Charles. He was the bald homeless guy that called you the champions. As it turns out, he just made all that shit up. He just thought that he had a bit of time magic and he could see the future and the past, and he did get glimpses of the future, but as with time magic, it's never entirely clear. But he would have seen you guys standing with Josephine against Margaret, and so he just was like, you must be champions of hers or some fighters of hers, and he recognized you all and just came up with that story. But he was another one of them, and he was there with the neckbeard guy in Springfield, the town over from Pleasant Valley, because they were just waiting on Josephine's return. They knew that at some point she was going to have to come back. I'm going off on so many tangents, but that's basically her crew. Her crew was a bunch of basically cult-like followers that she had helped awaken their magic to. And at some point, things came to a head with her and Margaret essentially said, "You need to leave or I'm going to take care of you myself." And so Josephine packed her shit and left and started a journey to go around and find some place that she can feel welcome and home and whatnot.
So she went around seducing nuns?
Well, I mean, if you remember,
Well, wouldn't you?
she was
fair
just hanging
question.
out in the library, and then Gemma came up to her. So
Gimmo goes around seducing mages.
What? No.
No, so what you're saying is that Josephine had her simp squad.
hmm
That's what I'm getting out of this.
Does that
But-
mean that Gemma is technically a cultist of Josephine?
Yeah.
potentially, she
Okay.
essentially did the same with you. Where once you got to know each other, she used her advanced spirit knowledge and whatnot to help awaken you.
Okay.
But as with anything that revolves around people reincarnating with demon possession and whatnot, her soul still had some of the demon inside of it. And as time went on, more of the demon would take control, and it became harder and harder for her to keep it under check. And it didn't help that she had such a troubled life with basically everyone out to get her over things that she didn't have complete control over. And the fear of abandonment, the fear of letting people down, losing Dallas and not knowing where he was also struck a fear that maybe she wasn't as good of a friend as she thought. Just a lot of fear. And then running into Gemma and possibly getting romantic, and then feeling like she couldn't hold a partner or be truly intimate. That's another fear. So as the fears built up, the demon started taking over again. And that's what some of the visions of Gemma were of Josephine, was her battle with the demon and starting to lose it.
What you're saying is we're essentially in a very adult version of My Little Pony, where we would use friendship to win the day over the powers of fear.
I mean, I think that what that's called is having a sit-down therapy session with somebody with CPTSD.
Potentially.
Like that actually sounds like what the metaphor is here. Interesting.
And so the Chibawats, as they came to be called by Henry, are actually little pieces of the demon that are eking out of the gauntlet from the cave. They're sort of spilling out and sowing and thriving off of fear in Pleasant Valley. And the more fear there is, the more they grow in numbers, and they feed off of it and grow from it.
And here
They
I
looked so
thought they were
cute
just
before.
pestilence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Famine spirits.
But I guess that does produce fear. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little Ghibli suit spirits.
That's it was the fear of Thaumacool, because Thaumacool is a harvest spirit. So he wants to make sure that the crops that are harvested are, well nourishing. They help the community, grow and prosper and whatnot. But as the farmers having problems growing their crops, partly because the spirits of the forest were now not fulfilling their duties, they were instead hanging out at a random cabin in the middle of the woods. Over the past couple decades, it's grown harder and harder to have a full crop, which means their harvests have been worse, and Thaumacool's been getting fearful, the farmers are fearful, and so the Chibawats were overrunning the farmers market.
Oh geez. Wait. So
Yeah.
does that mean? Hold on. So she was in the right then. Oh God. I can't.
The right about what?
About returning the spirits.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. They
I really did just want to talk to Teacup.
Morrigan.
Why did you have to be so
Teacup.
aggro about it?
I thought you were the ones who all stole him.
I shot a
Why
fucking
were
bird!
the thoughts I got from you were of hunting them down, not
Yeah.
like
Yes. How else am I going to fight something without hunting it?
No, but that's... Oh my god, please. That was a whole misunderstanding where I shot a
To
fucking
hunt
bird?
does not mean to kill.
Yes.
Yes.
usually it does mean to kill.
If somebody said the word hunt to me, I would assume killing. Well,
I mean, that's what the
Specifically,
purpose
I would
of
assume
hunting is.
tracking and then
Otherwise,
killing.
yeah, it's searching or finding or something.
Lost in Time asked me, sorry, Chen, I know I haven't been incredibly attentive to you because I'm used to, when I have this screen up and these people in chat, to not deal with chat that much. Sorry. But he asked me if I created someone who was pure evil but too stupid to be a threat, or a guy he had no knowledge of this magic stuff but was a huge dick. Not really. The demon is aware of how powerful it could be once it started to gain some power, but that's like the closest thing to something of pure evil. For everyone else, I pretty much tried to have somewhat of a justifiable motive other than I want to be evil. It's just that consequences have action, so even if you want to do something nice, something
What
bad
about
can happen from
The
it.
guy that wanted a horde of bimbo sex slaves. What was his justification?
Yeah, I don't like that.
I
I
don't know.
mean,
Yeah.
do you really have to ask? I mean, who doesn't want a horde of bimbo sex slaves?
I don't.
Just
No, I'm pretty against that.
well, I mean, they're not real. Is it different if
No.
you have a honey pop or any of those? What is it?
3D girls.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
you,
Just
it's if you had a
Monica.
Just
video
Monica.
game,
Just Monica.
Just Monica.
just Monica. But no,
I'll use
he was essentially
Oh.
going to be the coin, the other side of the coin to Gregory, somebody who was
Okay.
incredibly lonely, who never really had time for finding someone and dating, and probably was incredibly awkward. But instead of wanting to build a loving family that he could protect and serve, he was instead just going to build a harem for himself and enjoy and indulge in the bodies, so to say. But
I see.
so yeah, that's essentially where that plot line was going to go. You all would go into the cave and at least find out about the demon leaking out of the gauntlet. I figured either Kiana, Henry, or some combination could either reinforce the gauntlet or possibly end up tearing it apart and completely unleashing it.
It definitely was going to be that second one by total accident when we were in there.
well, that would have been the
Yeah.
perfect time for me to come back in.
So
What did you do?
So essentially,
Wow.
unleashing it would have let the demon take back over Josephine, and at that point, I was going to make it about them coming in contact with each other. Henrietta of the past and Josephine of the present meeting and their souls combining back together into one being, but also bringing the demon into its full power again. The Josephine of current was going to have like the most cowardly, fearful parts of Henrietta's personality in there, so it could fuel the demon. And once she got back with her whole soul again, she would be a complete person and be able to express herself to Gemma in no uncertain words, and be a full person again for once in her life.
Possessed by a demon.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
And
That's a.
after having 2 lifetimes of basically being an outcast, maybe finally feeling like she could be welcome in a group of people. That was the plan there. And then of
Yeah.
course you guys can fight a fear demon and enjoy.
Victory via power of friendship.
Yeah.
By the
Or
power of
lady
friendship and
bangers.
this gun I bought.
How?
So there was that.
Could you make a spirit bullet? Could that have been the thing you would do eventually?
I'm sure.
What?
That would have been pretty
You
rad.
gonna
if I did
Yu Yu
that.
Hakusho this up?
Could I
Spirit
just-
gun?
Exactly.
Wait a
I
minute.
think
Could
you
I?
might have been given a spirit bullet from Snow.
Wait. So wait, could I just do spirit plus forces to make a spirit bullet? Well, what would that actually do fundamentally?
I think you'd need
Punching
matter
souls
to
at
make a
people.
spirit
Well,
bullet.
Yeah, you could
Oh, I
you could
suppose so.
basically affect a bullet to make it spirit interactable, because that's like your level 3 spirit is being able to physically interact with spirits and fight them. So I
Hold on,
think like
wait.
you could probably do that.
That'd be hilarious. This centuries old fear spirit or whatever just gets shot. Why? just taps it with a gun. Like, what?
Actually, better than that, my full idea, I guess this character stuff, my plan with Ethan over time was to slowly work towards maxing out correspondence and time so he could do Batman shit. And one of the things that he could do
Ooh.
with a spirit gun with maxed time would be to shoot this motherfucking demon in the past before any of this shit happened once we understood what was happening. I was going to
Wait,
undo
wait.
causality
Grand-
to fuck this thing up.
Hold on.
Grandfather
With max
paradoxes.
With
Yeah.
max time, could you do the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure thing where you are continuously shooting something through every single point of time for eternity?
Yes. I could.
Oh, Tusk Act 4.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
No. I could also. I could Golden Experience Requiem the fuck out of him.
That would be so radical.
I haven't watched
What?
JoJo's,
What?
so
What?
I don't.
What?
I don't know the reference.
Oh,
Okay.
it's a trip. I'll tell you that.
Is it a bizarre
JoJo's
adventure?
Bizarre Adventure is weird.
Yeah.
It is.
It's not called Jar Jar Sensible Adventure.
Wait, oh no, I have one big regret now.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Gemma never did the Doctor Strange thing where she just punches the spirit out of somebody.
Damn it.
yeah.
But I think that's like the coolest thing.
Hey,
That'd be so
Zorilla.
cool.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again. Welcome in.
Oh, that probably would have worked on Stonemore again.
Probably
Yeah.
would have. I wish I thought about that.
But that was basically the plans for Josephina and Henrietta, is basically undoing the Exorcist's attempts to delay this problem for a future time and dealing with the demon and making Henrietta / Josephine's soul whole again.
Okay. So wait, what was about the dolls? Like the dolls with the time?
That's what I was going to ask.
That from the time that Henrietta was with the Bissett family, one of the younger Bissetts there was friends with her for a bit, and whenever they were just messing around with the dolls, this other Bissett accidentally locked them in time as part of her awakening.
Oh.
And so that was eventually going to become one of the Bissett aunt or uncle's like great grandparent, and eventually, whenever we got back to there's a good possibility at some point someone would do something with, or I guess Anthony specifically would do something with time magic and possibly have a paradox, and I was going to temporarily send them back in time 100 years, and you could see things like Henrietta playing with the dolls, and then this other Bissett kid having their awakening, and in doing so, those two dolls were going to be trapped in time for 100 years.
And so if we had brought the dolls with us to the cave,
Yeah,
we could have used them.
possibly. They were going to be incredibly emotionally connected to Henrietta. That's essentially what their point was, to be something very empathetic to Henrietta that had been lost in time. And that's why they were so emotional. The one that represented Henrietta was the crying one, and the other one was the Bissett doll, and they were the happy one. Because Henrietta was like perpetually fearful and scared of things.
Okay. So, for my character, since we were asked about the dolls,
Mm-hmm.
when was I going to have a bakery?
Yeah, in 2 days, essentially. The Holy Cannoli was about to open, and that was the day it was going to open. I was going to hopefully bring back Morrigan, and she was going to show up in town that day on your grand opening, just to throw a big wrench in that. But I did want to get to that point. It just felt like everything went so slow. I wanted to do so many things, so it just felt like there was always something else to do, and it took too long. I really, really should have just said, all right, you guys move in the Pleasant Valley, the bakery's already done, you can, like the first session, you can start playing it. But I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be nice to have like a grand opening, and then stuff can happen on the grand opening, and oh, what if they have to clean up the property first? And oh, there's like magic things going on in there that you can find out. But then I ended up pushing the date back way too far, because in my mind on the first couple sessions, I'm like, things are supposed to be like, all right, a couple days, each session plays out a couple days of downtime and then an event happens. And instead it was a couple hours in game per session. And it just fucked
Yeah.
everything up. So that's basically it. But yeah, I wanted you to have your bakery, and that would be the place where rumors would come in, be like, hey, did you hear about the weird thing that was going on in the middle of town? And then you guys could go to the back of the bakery, do a little prep time magic stuff, and then Scooby-Doo and the mystery machine and go take care of whatever the problem is. But it didn't play out that way. And I apologize.
Okay, it is just it was weird the way the timing of everything, how it was being paced. It was a little weird because it made sense how it was going, but the fact that there was so much going on, and then we did hit a bunch of difficulties with games not happening as frequently and everything. So it logically, what you were saying, you're right. It does 100% make sense, and a grand opening is a lot of fun, and having to clean out the property was actually fun.
And also letting you build rapport with the people by doing the lunch services at the church, I thought was nice, so that you could be like, you could have time to see how the town was dependent on fast food, and people were basically indulging themselves on McDonald's exclusively.
Although,
and
apparently, none of that mattered because I blew up the McDonald's.
You did, just before the grand opening of the bakery too, huh?
How odd.
Yeah.
I will say, hold on, sorry, I've been away from my mic for a second. Mac and cheese ready. I was unaware of your grand plan to subvert McDonald's when we walked into the fucking building. Just saying.
I mean, that was always the plan.
I know, but not like that explosive.
It was never to blow up McDonald's. Like, I wanted an actual competition and to prove to people that just naturally my food was better.
Yeah, but instead you blew up McDonald's.
But instead I blew up McDonald's and took away their choice.
Yeah.
All because I wanted to get a kid an ice cream cone for free.
Yes.
Didn't want to pay for an ice cream. No.
So, I'm going to say, I think the structure that you just described, that you were going for with the game, would have been wonderful. I think the hard thing about RPGs that I've seen in general, and not saying this to override your experience, but more to add to what happened here, best laid plans and all that. Basically, every RPG that I've ever seen run, and a lot of them that I have tried running myself, and one that I successfully ran for a bit, it happens. You have the plan for the episode of the Monster of the Week episode format. It doesn't happen. You have a grand plan about heroes and villains and what's going to happen in the future. Doesn't happen. Shit, my D&D and space game turned out with the players deciding that they just wanted to blow everything up. And I went, shit, I gotta account for this. My original plan was to have an actual political intrigue story. So I understand you going through the grief of, I want to do this game. I wanted to have this format, and the format just doesn't happen. I feel bad.
So before the first session,
that I contributed.
Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about that. I mean, it's definitely harder. Okay, here's another little background thing for people to know. ID was going to be part of a second group. I was going to
wonder about that.
Yeah, we were going to have two different groups, and I was essentially going to have the mages of Pleasant Valley and the mages of another town, and I honestly think that probably would have been like Springfield, essentially.
I was thinking that, yeah.
They were going to be in neighboring towns, and it was angling that the ones in Pleasant Valley would be mages, and the ones in the other town were probably going to be technocracy. And
yeah, that was the plan.
Yeah, because
that seems on brand.
Yeah, it seems like all of your characters were going to be more technocratic, and so I was going to have this group doing mage things over in Pleasant Valley, the issues with Margaret trying to keep the technocracy out of it, and then you all over in Springfield or whatever I named it doing technocracy things, trying to squelch out mages and whatnot. And then eventually you guys would have butt heads at some point, have 2 plot points leading to you all meeting up and then maybe duking it out. Because, obviously there's a lot of conflict there. But that second group never really came to fruition. And so ID still wanted to play, and we just got to a point where we realized this other group wasn't going to form, so I tried to get his character in on this. And yeah, in a lot of ways it was pretty ham-fisted. And for that, we can talk about Ethan's character and the Cult of Ecstasy. Ultimately, what I wanted to do with them after introducing you was to have them learn about Margaret's secret thing going on, and for them, much like you all, to be very concerned with this person sort of taking over a town and ruining it and having some secret project, but at the same time not wanting to go all out war on them, especially if they were sort of in a disadvantaged state. So the idea there was to have the cult learn about it, but not exactly be able to do anything about it immediately. And so you were going to be their little agent on the ground, keeping them informed about what's going on here. Because if you let someone powerful like Margaret do something that could fuck over all mages, or, you know, as some of you even thought she was with the technocracy, they wanted to keep an eye on that. So you were going to be their agent. And then eventually, when you learned about what was actually going on down there, you may have fed that info back to the cult, and then they probably would have wanted in on the what she was doing, so that they can benefit from it also. So that's it. You were going to be the informant, and then essentially end up being the broker between Margaret and the Cult of Ecstasy, and then be basically the cult's IT manager, their magic internet IT guy, the sysadmin.
Yeah. Or given the circumstances, the sysadmin. That fell apart fast, in part because of the roleplay that I decided to pull with him early. I think because I didn't have a secret plan is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
My thinking. Oh, spoilers! I guess we're at that point. Ethan was some guy. His whole thing is that he's a normal dude thrust into this situation, realizing magic's real, and his first thought is, "I'm gonna take a vacation." That was legit his entire motivation. There was no hidden shit there. There wasn't a grand plan. There wasn't he's secretly evil, or like he has a motivation. His motivation was he wanted a freaking vacation, and this was the most exciting thing that's ever happened to him.
Spoilers: the guy that can't keep a secret doesn't have secrets.
Precisely. I was worried you guys would take it as like, oh, he obviously has something he's doing, and it's like, nah, he's just a dude.
No, Emma fully trusted Ethan from the start.
Okay, especially because I fucked up the secret stuff immediately. But yeah, no,
I talk out loud in loud voices next to the person we're trying to spy on.
Yeah. My thinking over time was that Ethan was going to slowly, I wanted as a player, to play him as somebody who is pretty confident in himself and like, yeah, fuck you, no, I am going to do things my way, and then slowly realize the consequences of his actions. That was part of the gun thing, and why I reacted in character so strongly. Out of character, I didn't realize, like, I thought this was like a magical construct. I'm like, no, it's a fucking bird, oh, fuck. So I adapted that I adapted that pretty fast and realized, okay, wow, Ethan would actually respond with abject horror at this. He's just a dude. He's never shot a gun before. He's just some office worker. How would a real person like this react? And I was going to slowly fold it into, as he developed as a character over the next X number of sessions, he'd realize he wants to stop the shit that's happening here, not just because, oh, it's the right thing to do and he's a hero in a story that he likes, essentially. He gets to play kind of God in a space that otherwise he would have no real influence in. He would start moving towards the idea of, I need to be responsible with this stuff. I can't just use this because it's fun. I can't just do adventure stuff. These are real people I'm affecting. And instead of being so detached from the situation, just kind of goofing around, he would take this stuff seriously. I thought that'd be an interesting direction to send him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it all started with a bullet.
Bullet.
Like many stories in America, it all started with a bullet.
Well, a lot of them end that way.
I do sort of wish that the accidentally popping up in Ireland thing would have come up again.
Oh,
Because that was fucking nice.
What was her name?
That's the problem. I wish that she was in it.
I would go
There's a-
back. I just go back and rewatch the episode to catch her name
Yeah.
again. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna have her come back at some point after you've
Yeah.
after you put down the strawberry daiquiris in a lot of places. Have her
Mhm.
show up with Bartholomew so that they can
Yeah.
lend a hand.
Yes, that's what I figured was going to happen.
By the way,
What
what's on screen right now is the rough plot points that I had before the characters were made. This is essentially the web of clues that I wanted to have about this character and the things that went on. Before Gemma was a character, Nicholas, Anthony, or Ethan, let alone Morgan, I made this little web of clues because I wanted to have this thing that happened 100 years ago that would then be influencing things in the present as little Scooby-Doo adventures that would happen. And then after Gemma was made, I was like, oh, well, you know, she wants to have this subplot of being a closeted lesbian, so why don't we make a love interest with some connection to this? Nicholas was going to be a healer, and so I wanted him to have some familial ties in the area, because he wanted to be from this town. So he was going to have familial ties with Henrietta through one of his ancestors. And then for Anthony, I was going to tie in his time magic in order for him to go to the past and get clues from that time while he was here, and for the bakery to sort of bring that out of people to, as he, you know, lifted people from horrible degrading town. He was going to start piecing together things and be able to go into the past with his time magic and uncover more stuff. But then we ended up with Ethan also with correspondence magic, and that's when we started getting more we had to have the world open up a bit more because we could get things from farther away and clues from far off places. And so Margaret's role as another correspondence person, I really started to think about upplaying how much correspondence she had when I realized that Ethan was going to be part of this main campaign.
It sucks too that the original plan didn't go through with the technocracy related stuff, because man, that was a cool concept.
Yeah, it would have been neat. It also would have been a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think that the idea of dueling parties is fun, personally. I wish that had come to pass.
I think since we talked about Josephine so much, why don't we talk about Gemma? So
Huh? Who? Me?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to talk about me.
with Gemma, there was obviously a lot of things going on between her religious preferences and her preferences in people, and I wanted to make those choices apparent in both the way that her avatar was represented and as those changed. How did you feel about those developments?
I liked it. I admit that internally, I had different thoughts about how I thought the Josephine thing was going to go. Mainly because of how Gemma had acted. Because anytime Josephine came up, Gemma was always defensive towards her side, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that the twist might be that Josephine was ultimately just using Gemma. So I thought that there would be this additional shift in her avatar. Which, I mean, that could have happened still with the whole demon thing.
Yeah.
But, you know. Eventually, I wanted Gemma to find a middle ground between these two things that were so important to her. You know, her faith as well as her own personal values and her connections to people. And eventually being able to stand up on her own.
Yeah, I was hoping...
So instead of relying on this tree or that tree, she'd grow her own tree.
Yeah. I was hoping that I could sort of touch both ways with it, do a little push here and there, have you interact with Josephine's spirit so that she could sort of strengthen you in one direction, but then turn around and have like Father Andrews really push and support you in the church so that you would be pushed in another direction, and basically put you in a tug of war between those.
I think that really worked, honestly, because Father Andrews was great. I love Father Andrews as a character. He's phenomenal.
Just one.
Yeah, Father Andrews was a great guy.
Yeah.
He's
Agreed.
just a nice guy.
So what was his secret evil thing for him to make him a complex character?
Nothing really. He was just trying his best. That was basically it. I didn't want him to have like he was aware enough of Josephine's situation. He didn't know she was magical in any way, but he knew that she was basically a troubled kid, and he knew that she didn't really get a fair shake. But at the same time, it also seemed like she was constantly getting in trouble. So he was at least aware of that somewhat. But as a pastor, he tried to, or a clergyman, whatever it would be, he just wanted to try to help people out, and he was doing the best he could. He wasn't necessarily the best at it. I guess his biggest flaw would be that he didn't fully believe in himself. But then after Gemma showed up and he felt like a strong presence coming from her, he thought that maybe this was like the best thing that could happen to the town, is somebody that actually has a spark of divinity could help pull this town out of the slump that it's found itself in, because he had failed in doing that. But ultimately, I don't think he had any... I didn't have plans for him to have ulterior motives or to have some secret agenda.
Well, that's
The church itself, though, was basically Father Morris's sanctuary. And so as Gemma became more attuned to Josephine, there was going to be more acts against her. The first one, when she first started to shift towards the purple tree away from the golden tree, that's when that plant monster attacked her. Like, one of the defenses of the church kicked in because it recognized you as an enemy of Father Morris's.
That is very ironic, considering Gemma was considering it a demon.
Mm-hmm.
Irony.
And
I mean, I think most modern day churches would consider it a demon, as they don't allow magic.
True.
But at the same time,
you were the demons, and then John was a zombie.
Father Morris saw him more as, he didn't see himself as a mage. He was just a man of God, and the things he did were miracles. He was just working through God. And so any protection or any of the things that he was doing to build up the sanctuary that he had was just, to him, acts of faith and belief. So
that makes sense.
Seeing, as I said, sort of a Don Quixote character looking for monsters where there weren't any, he often found himself doing miracles of that sort. And Henrietta became a very good target for that when she started getting possessed by a demon and killing people.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your spirit became tied to hers and had that familiar tinge to it, that flavor. And then for well, let's talk about the Besets then. As for the Besets, you all had been in the town for a long time, ever since it was a prosperous mining town with your family being medical practitioners. You frequently would, in any health-related emergency, be there to help the town. And it's no wonder that you had generational wealth after being there. And part of the reason why people in the mines liked Henrietta is that she had developed that sort of desire to help people out in emergencies, and she was close to the mine, so whenever there was a problem, she would show up and try to help out. So she had built up rapport, and your family was partly the reason for that. But at some point when Margaret showed up in town, she realized that there was this rich history of this witch and, you know, a crusade that had happened. And she was actually the one that burnt down the library originally, the archives, if you guys remember that little plot thread. Margaret, she wanted to get rid of any knowledge of there being any sort of crazy, weird, mystical stuff, because going into the modern age, then any little cryptozoologist or conspiracy theorist might find out about it and then come to town and start asking questions. So she was the one that burnt all of that down, which also got rid of some of the histories of town too. But yeah, essentially your family's been there the whole time, and you were going to have ancestors that played little parts in the town. As I said, you had one that was friends with Henrietta. You were going to have some that were friends with Morris, and essentially your whole family tree would end up upheaving and spreading out into the world until it was pretty much just your aunt, uncle, and dad who were left in town. And your aunt and uncle didn't have a kid, and as previously mentioned, your dad's problems led to you and what's going on now. So
isn't that the way with all little kids? The parents' problems lead to them.
Yeah. The sins of the father are inherited by the son. So yeah, I was basically just going to make the Bassettes be part of every step of the history. So as I was expecting Anthony to end up tripping through time, let alone maybe bringing you all as part of rituals and stuff. There was going to be different members of the Bassett family that would basically be like, oh, okay, another mage from another time showed up. It's time to fill you in on what's going on here. Because they would now know, they would have a long history of people interacting with time travelers from future Pleasant Valley, trying to come back and piece together things that had happened.
A long history of time travel in our family.
Our family tree goes backwards.
It's a wreath, and not in the normal redneck kind of way.
It became a family. It's a family. It became a family telephone pole, then a family Mobius strip.
So while it's,
but in a good way,
I think most of the story for Nicholas was wrapped up in his dad and the goings on of Pleasant Valley, especially Margaret, because you really latched on to your rivalry with Margaret. So that's where I put all of my focus.
Plater is really evil. What can I say? Also, Nicholas kept being right about it.
So I didn't really flesh out a whole lot of your ancestry in town, despite them being there for a long time. But it would have been anytime Anthony and or other things ended up tripping through time, there would have been a Bassett somewhere, somehow, aware of what's going on and then putting their nose in it. Which maybe should bring us to Anthony.
Yes.
Or, shall we say... Not Anthony.
yes, not Anthony.
Not Anthony.
His name was not actually Anthony all along.
Did I wait? Where did I save it?
I have it.
I don't have it out in front of me. It's not.
Wait, you were so deep undercover you forgot your actual name?
That's actually a good way to do it.
Ooh, that's wow. Yeah.
It was
I mean, I had to
Lorenzo.
train myself so much to only respond to Anthony.
It was
Lorenzo Biviano or something. Biviano.
Oh, Viviano.
Viviano, yes. So, Anthony didn't personally have strong ties to Pleasant Valley, other than he had a good friendship with Nicholas, which means he must have been like...
We were pod friends.
You were what?
Pod friend. You know.
Well,
was growing up in pod.
Doesn't No, it doesn't mean that I have to be a homunculus either.
No, I
No,
was
no.
making a
Because-
joke.
Yeah. But they were
No.
childhood friends, and
Mhm.
he and Gregory didn't really see eye to eye because Gregory thought he should be something more than a chef, but Anthony really Lorenzo really wanted to be. And so they had a falling out as part of their backstory. And he went to Chicago and ended up working for the mafia because they just basically needed a manager to run a front for their illegal enterprises. But Anthony ended up being really good at it. He not only was a fantastic cook, but a good manager. But as with most mafia stories, at some point, the glory days came to an end, and that's when the vampires attacked.
Yes, naturally, vampires are natural enemies of the mafia.
Because the vampires were a rival mafia group, and they were seeing the writing on the walls that, if you're going to be a murderous den of vampires, you're gonna have to operate
A
as
restaurant?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
It's also really, really hard to operate a mafia when you have to be invited in.
Mm. So
Yeah.
the vampire mafia essentially needed to take over so that they could control the underground, and that meant clearing out their opposing factions. But Anthony had a direct encounter with the vampires being clearly inhuman monsters, and so he was a loose end they needed tied up. And using their various methods of quasi-magic, the vampires were going to hunt him down. Meanwhile, Anthony just needed to get away. So clearly, this wasn't like a big secret, especially since you guys already had run-ins with them. But the Zetskas, the vampire mafia, was going to hunt him down. They found Pleasant Valley, but they didn't find Lorenzo. They just knew that Nicholas had contact with him because in the hospital where Lorenzo was at the time, he got a call. He called to Nicholas, and Nicholas got him the plane tickets and then all of the change in identity stuff. And the Zetskas were able to at least get the information that he was connected to Nicholas Bissett. They didn't know where he was now. They didn't even know that he moved to Pleasant Valley. The only connection they had is the last thing they knew that he did was call Nicholas Bissett. And so they came for Nicholas.
Oh, and this is why you should use NordVPN.
Today's sponsor, NordVPN. And
You know
use
what?
NordPass.
If you're tired of major
Sponsored
scouring
by
your
McDonald's
location,
anymore. Not after we blew up their restaurant.
Yeah.
So the
I
big
didn't blow
thing
up their restaurant.
the thing that was hopefully going to test Anthony and Nicholas' friendship was the fact that Nicholas was going to be taking the brunt of the target from the Zetskas until Anthony either revealed himself to them or dealt with the problem. And I know Anthony doesn't want to reveal himself to them, so Nicholas was going to get ever increasing amount of hostility, and it was going to constantly throw a wrench in their plans as the Zetskas upped their operations and tried to fuck with them more and more. Why is
And
my
Margaret
tracking?
sent them to the moon.
I was trying to deal with them. I just needed to figure out what vampires were first.
Mm-hmm. Someone.
And I was failing like every roll when I tried to research it.
Yeah, that didn't help. That also kind of goes back into what we were talking about, because I kept on trying to look up things in Vampire the Masquerade and seeing how I can translate vampires from that into this, and it's really hard to do, especially without buying the source books. I know I got a hold of a couple PDFs and stuff, but it runs into the same problem that Mage does, is there's been multiple editions and a lot of them have contradictory information in them, and it's just kind of hard to pin it all down. So
Yeah. Vampire's a
And
little better about it, but yeah.
it also doesn't help that Vampire the Masquerade is what I have the most experience with when it comes to World of Darkness. So normally I would say, well, ask me, but then again, it's dealing with a plot line that was mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it a lot more difficult. Um, but yeah, at least the vampire books overall are actually consistent when it comes to rules. I don't know about
Yeah.
the other ones necessarily.
But that was essentially the plan. Was I don't think you were ever going to fully wipe out the Zetskas. They were just going to have increasingly more powerful members do assaults on Pleasant Valley. And you were going to have to basically take care of them without raising the suspicions of other people in town.
So,
'Cause
drop
obviously-
a meteor on St. Louis or something.
Oh, well, I mean, you know, figure out that they're vampires, then figure out what actually works on vampires, because it's not the superstitious stuff that we think of, like garlic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then figure out, you know, so then we can build a detection system, and then we can build traps. And then we could
Then
lure
we can
these.
drop a moon on them.
Well, I mean, I was thinking to lure them into like daylight traps, but you know, yeah, that works.
Oh,
too.
you're right. We should drop the sun on them.
So
Yes.
fun fact, I would have totally been able to help with that once I got a bunch of correspondence. And
I
time
know.
It would've been fucking
100% know this. Like in my head, out of game, these
Yeah.
were my thought processes and plans.
Yeah.
Getting
There
it
was
to getting it so that my character could get to this point of doing it was not playing out.
Yeah, that's the thing. I could do some Looney Tunes shit if we eventually had to deal with them. It would be great.
Not to mention,
And then I'd take like Paradox and die instantly.
there was also going to be Father Morris's sanctuary, where if you guys had stepped sideways inside the church, you could have basically found his vault of monster hunting equipment. And
Nice.
the spirits that he had basically miracled Quody Fingers into protecting the town would have kicked into overdrive when the vampires showed up.
Ooh.
And so
we were in
not-
a very safe place.
So not only would the vampires have been causing problems, at least from Margaret's point of view of trying to keep things under wrap, because, you know, dealing with an onslaught of undead assailants is going to clearly cause some problems. But then the natural defenses that Father Morris had built up that she was unaware of would have gone into overdrive, and there would have been like plant monsters and holy water elementals that were going to be like
Holy
pulling,
water elementals.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
showing up to partake in the hostilities, and you guys would probably have to deal with that because once they get activated, then they don't want to deactivate, and that's going to cause problems. So just more little things to tease out. And I think that wraps us around to the last character here, who had a very short presence in the campaign, and for that I apologize.
Short and memorable.
But
Very much so. Sorry, Snuggly.
Morrigan,
Definitely one of the best introductions.
since your character was way more secretive than other characters here, do you want to explain Morrigan and what she was about?
Okay, so funnily you mentioned this secrecy. She wasn't that secretive. Morgan is a member of the I think it's pronounced correctly, the Vember Covens.
Verbena.
Verbena. And her whole deal is she was basically a bit of a spirit specialist for them. And in years around Pleasant Valley, they had noticed that all the spirits had been missing for a very long time. She eventually managed to encounter one of them that had been left behind. And that one told her, basically gave her the lead that all the other spirits had ended up in Pleasant Valley, so that's where she was going to try and find them all. And what should she encounter on her way there? One of them in a teacup.
So, like 4 mages. 5
Yeah.
mages?
Yeah, Verbena are life mages, and they have a very strong connection to like forests and orchards and stuff like that. So they were mostly connected to the life side of things, and her coven essentially knew that the plants and crops were having a hard time growing around Pleasant Valley, but they didn't know exactly why. But because Morgan was more in tune with spirit than life, she was able to get the other piece of the puzzle to them, which was, hey, there's these spirits that help tend to the groves of the woods and whatnot, and they don't seem to be present here. And so they basically entrusted her with a quest to go find what happened to the spirits and right things so that they could be back to their rightful order.
They could have picked a better negotiator.
Well, that doesn't
That
mean
they
she
could
has
have.
social skills.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, at the end of that battle, what I was gonna have. Oh, you wanna? It's not just it. Why don't you tell them about where you got your magic from and your awakening and stuff like that, so that they can get a little bit of the piece of that puzzle.
Oh, let me just find the note. Because I don't think it's on the Roll20 side.
Yeah, you didn't put it on there. Well, while you're looking at the backstory stuff, I was going to say the wolves that carried her away were going to drop her off at that crossroads, but because she was unconscious, she was unable to make the payment for the help that the Fae spirits had given, and so instead they were going to take body parts from her. And she's basically a warlock in that she was awakened by a Fae spirit having contact with her, and that Fae spirit essentially takes care of her and helps, repair her equipment and give her little insights into the world of magic. And she was going to be turned as I was hoping it'd be ironic, into a scarecrow, where she was going to have her body parts sewn back on, and to anyone who's a mage, you would be able to see that her like arm and leg were stuffed with hay, but to any sleeper, she looks like a normal person. So
Jesus Christ.
she was the person with an affinity for crows, and the irony is, in order to continue living, she was going to be turned into a scarecrow, and she would
That sounds Fae-like.
naturally repulse birds. Birds are going to like disperse around her and stuff, and that was.
Man, we should have just killed her. It sounds way more sad and sadistic than just like everything she loves is now afraid of her forever.
I should have probably aimed for the head.
But
Oh God, I
She-
feel really sad.
she, like, in order to fight you guys, I'm like, I know being one-sided is pretty bad. This is probably not a fight you're going to come out on top, let alone live from. So she had spirits to call in. She had, allies that she could bring in from the Fae world, but it was going to come at a cost. And so ultimately this character was going to be either killed off or have something tragic happen. And then afterwards, there was a possibility that you guys could form some sort of friendship afterwards, when she's been put into a very compromised state and had the fight taken out of her. But there wasn't enough time for her Zuko arc to come to an end.
Yeah.
Aw.
Alright, so, okay, the gist of her awakening, when she was at university, she got lost in the woods while drunk. And basically, what happened is, as she got more and more lost and more desperate, she kind of just threw the bottle away, vowed never to drink again, and that's when the fairies appeared before her and awoken her.
And the Fae Silky,
Yeah, Silky.
she wanted to give you, she wanted to help you, but in return you had to give something to her. And
Yeah.
and what was that?
Let me see. The only note I have is that it was never drinking again. Was there anything else?
Pasties?
Oh yeah, that's right. She also had to leave Cornus pasties out for Silky in order to help maintain any equipment.
Mm-hmm. This Fae had never eaten something so delicious before, and so anytime Morgan wanted to interact with her, she had to give her an offering of some Cornish pasties, which, if you haven't had, is like a roll with meats
I
and
miss the
cheeses and
Cornish pasty co.
Yeah.
stuffed into it. Delicious, usually. At least the ones I've had.
Yeah, they're pretty nice.
So yeah, the hope there was that Morgan was going to show up. There was obviously going to be conflict between her and Gemma because she knows that the spirits that were at that cabin need to be released. And oh my god, internet, please. Please? Can you track my face? I hate this so much. I really need to find a way to fix this. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll just ignore it. But there's obviously going to be conflict between her and Gemma because Gemma, of course, wants to take care of the little spirits because they're cute and adorable. And the Morgan needs to get them free so that they can go back out and fulfill their duties to take care of the forests and tend to the crops and whatnot. And I thought that would be interesting, especially once the hostilities leveled out. Then Morgan could just become another member of the party.
Yeah. But sadly, things kind of went a bit south.
Just a bit. A little south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My plan was to have if I ever came back, was to have Snuggly's ghosted like a charm necklace thing.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. They did try to steal your bird soul
Yeah.
and put it in a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching that. I was thinking, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
I was wondering why it was being done the entire time.
No one decided to
Yeah.
stop Gemma?
I was half tempted to send you.
okay. Okay, hold on.
I was half tempted to
First
send you a
off-
DM of like where Snuggly just kind of raises one feather at them as he fades back.
So,
Yeah.
I would like to remind, during the time, Gemma did have a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that's not a good.
Also-
oh.
Also, I was not exactly in the most clear of mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
So
It was-
you were
it was a bit of a
role-playing with
con-
method acting.
A little bit, yes. So, yeah.
How committed,
I know. I'm such an actress.
right?
Yeah.
Gosh. Seriously though,
That doesn't excuse the two of you letting it happen. Though.
the two of
Okay,
I sat there and was
Okay.
incredulous.
I
What the
I
hell
was
am I
only
gonna
told
do?
about using my power to help summon this creature.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I knew nothing about trying to fuse it with a gun.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Just for the record. The jury should note that Ethan had no part in this. Gemma just decided Gunn should be alive and hate us.
He was kind of inspired by what Harry had to say
Mm-hmm.
about the possessions thing. It was like, ooh. Krogan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's
So-
all the characters. I think that was all my plans for them. Of course, as with any GM, you should always plan just as much as what's necessary, because if you try to plan too far ahead, then you can have your plans squashed by roleplay, or you end up railroading people, and that's not fun either. So all of these were my intentions. It doesn't mean it would have played out that way necessarily as things rolled out. For all I know, you could have done something different and I would have had to take it in a different direction, but those are the plans.
Fighted with the fear demon.
What?
Fighted with the fear demon.
Yes.
Go attack Margaret.
Go side with the fear demon, let it take over Josephine and use that as power towards unseating Margaret
Oh,
or
God.
something. I don't know.
Better yet, go like, hey Gemma, how do you want to have a friend in your body? It'll be cool.
Oh yeah, the fear demon possesses Gemma too.
Yeah, that could get real bad. There's a lot of stuff that didn't happen that could have. Some bad, some good, some really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly bad.
Yeah, there's a lot that did not happen, which could have, but
I will
keep
say
saying-
the idea of a fear demon possessing a Gemma who can just throw tin dice at people with punches is a little
Yeah.
terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. Yeah, hey, see, terrifying. See, it's on brand.
Could create a lot of fear that way.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's enough fear being spread about martial arts being the work of the devil.
Huh?
Really?
That's
Fair.
apparently a real thing. That's a legit thing
I mean-
in some religious
What?
circles.
I've never heard that before.
The concept that
I'm
yoga,
not-
martial
That's a new
arts,
one.
etc., is an infiltration of Christian society. It's a whole thing.
Okay, no, I've heard that one.
It's
What?
weird.
That's bizarre.
Ah, yes, the insidious yoga, allowing old people to move around.
Yeah.
I know. That's my take on it. So, but in any
Let's
case,
see. I'm just looking through
Best-
my NPC list. Yeah, depending on how things went, the police officers might have had a bigger role in things, as you guys
Mhm.
had more assaults on town and trying to deal with maybe having vampires show up and then disappearing and things like that. Could have been awful.
Or police officers.
Also,
Get
Ethan,
hooked on the baked goods and never get them.
I wanted Ethan
Yeah.
to get in ever escalating legal troubles in Pleasant Valley because that seemed pretty funny.
okay, I wasn't super sure about that personally.
Just like it starts off with a speeding or a failure to yield to a traffic sign or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it would automatically be like inappropriate use of gun, brandishing a weapon, and things like that.
And then eventually it turns into like a anti-terrorism task force showing up.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm just some guy. Why are you people like this? It says on my character sheet, some guy.
Okay, noting for future characters, when playing the chef character,
Yeah.
always invite police people force over for
Mhm.
dinners.
Yeah. You gotta,
Oh yeah, make him friendly.
You gotta wine and
Yeah,
dine
yeah,
them.
that makes sense.
Honestly, that works for any RPG character who's not like an active anarchist. Actually, even then, make friends with the police anyway. They'll never see it coming.
Well, yeah, no, you definitely make friends, but like when you have the world star cooking chef character, that's absolutely perfect. Then those cops know they're not getting a meal like that anywhere else.
Yeah. I honestly wish that with my character, with the way I treated Ethan, I wish I had a better plan starting off. I think that had I started with the group initially, I would have had a much better plan starting out.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in partway through and being prepared to be part of a group that was kind of in opposition to the main group and knowing that was kind of the idea changed that.
Yeah. It definitely made things hard, especially since we were already like 5 or 6 sessions in before we introduced you.
Yeah, and party dynamics were already pretty much formed.
Mm-hmm.
Harkens back to another D&D game I once was in where my character was introduced in session 3, and the characters had already started their dynamic and almost immediately decided they were going to kill me.
Oh shit!
Because he's more trouble than he's worth. And then it took one character going, "Hey, whoa, actually, let's not." I was on the brink of losing a character, literally for being a prisoner of some bandits. No other crimes.
Hey, Laura, welcome in.
Oh, hello. But yeah, no, coulda, shoulda, wouldas. There's a lot of those. I think that overall, you did what you could with the game you had.
With the system.
Mm-hmm.
And the system being
Oh,
a
that
huge
too.
part of that. Please, yeah, no. Honestly,
Had
I've been
we had a reliable like 2 or 3 more sessions before we could have ended it, I could have tried to like bring all this to a head because we already had the Zetskas gearing up for an assault. We had what's his name? Mortimer, the mind controller guy, that fucked over the prisoner, and you guys wanted to find Clara, his wife. So Mortimer was going to have to try to do something soon. We also had Morrigan showing up to get the spirits, and Josephine was on a Greyhound on the way to town, and I was thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be interesting if all three things happened at the same time? Zetska's unload from a shipping container. Let's say there's like a crate on a freight train opens up, and it's just like 9 coffins stacked in a box, and then they open up, and you got 9 vampires in town. A Greyhound bus pulls up, and a girl in cargo pants and a tie-dyed t-shirt steps off, and then here comes this part scarecrow person shambling out of woods, stepping onto the concrete of the town. All three happening at the same time.
Okay.
And the church explodes into wood golems and water elementals.
And that too.
That sounds really good, but I have to say there's a part of it that doesn't sound great to me. So I remember you saying the next time Morgan would be showing up would have been on the grand opening of my bakery.
Exactly.
Which means those other 2 things would also be happening at the same time at the grand opening of my bakery.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's okay we didn't do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
What, you don't like the dilemma of having to deal with the supernatural things going on in town while also trying to run a profitable business venture? For a community in dire need of your particular skills and abilities.
I mean, you just gotta hope they all fight each other and not you.
It's just a big circle of Spider-Man pointing at each other.
Yeah, pretty much.
2 out of the 3 wouldn't be bad.
Hey, don't look at me. He dragged me into this, etc., etc.
He roped me into this. Don't look at me. He roped me into this.
That's the idea.
Which one do you want to kill? Because I just want to kill this one.
Then you guys make like a League of Evil and just come to an agreement.
League of Evil.
We're not evil. Everyone just goes, yo, how about we kill the main characters first?
Run by Bad Bird.
God.
Okay, let's field any random questions then from chat and from you all. I think we've talked about most of the things I can think of off the top of my head.
I gotta think on that.
I personally don't think I have any questions off the top of my head.
Well, we've talked a lot about how we felt about your campaign. How did you feel about your campaign? And us as ruining it as the players we are.
I mean, I did get to do a lot of the things I wanted to do. As much as I love running D&D and Pathfinder campaigns because I feel like I can do interesting combat scenarios in them and whatnot, I really like a political campaign where you have warring factions dealing with, underhanded and tactics that are less... just underhanded stuff, basically. So having a campaign that's about puzzle solving and having lore for people to dig into and, social situations between characters and having to navigate that, I did get to do it and I liked it. The problem is that I needed to pace things better. And I think if I had just learned to allow things to coast for a while, and not put immediacy on a lot of things, I think I could have done a lot better. But outside of the problems that I had in running it, because I was still in despite knowing what I wanted to do, I was still in a mindset of a D&D style adventure, I think it was pretty nice. I think the characters showed through. I feel like, if anything, Margaret was exactly what I wanted her to be, which is, on the surface, someone you would despise, but at the end of the day, she had a pretty good reason to do the things that she was doing, and even if it wasn't entirely logical, her past made that pretty clear that she was going to behave like that. Other than that, I feel like some characters were shallow, even though they kept coming back, like the farmer and the butcher, even though they kept on showing back up over and over. I didn't really go deep into them. Roger and Harold, yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like they could have been more characterized, but I just kept on putting too much immediacy on things when I should have let things be a bit more casual, so you had more downtime, more time to explore and whatnot. But I kept doing it more like D&D, where I would hook you into something and have you do something instead of letting things happen. So if I were to do it over, I would do it differently, but I think as far as things went, I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, that works out, I think.
I'd have to say, from my experience, putting out the hook and then just letting players try to figure things out, we will end up causing so much more problems than what you could write probably for us.
Mm-hmm.
We will end up naturally making things more complicated, and with failing on rolls, shenanigans will happen, buildings will get blown up, and there won't be any more restaurants in the town.
Oh yeah, you destroyed 100% of the existing restaurants in town.
Yes.
We've also built 100% of the existing restaurants in town after that.
True.
We are a menace.
Mm-hmm. And you're
As
lucky
all.
you weren't jettisoned out to Jupiter.
We'll just say Nicholas did nothing wrong. He has done nothing but good for that town.
She
Actually,
does
yeah, I'm
know.
thinking, of all the three groups, Nicholas is the only one who doesn't have someone coming to kill him.
Oh, the
Yeah,
Zetskas are.
Because I'm not a person, I don't make enemies.
Ethan didn't actually have anyone looking to kill him. Now that no, sorry, no one
Yes,
single
no,
character. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He made an enemy late. Is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Up until then, he was just some dude.
I think Gemma's biggest enemy was just herself, honestly.
Yeah, she's a little angsty girl. Look at her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You went through a literal hot topic phase and then forgot that you had the clothes on, and then had to be reminded you didn't have the frock on. I remember that happening. I was so confused. Like, but you're wearing like Hot Topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
Did we just forget about that? And then it turned out we'd forgotten about that.
I mean, it makes sense that Gemma would. Gemma's like basically spent her entire life in the cloth.
Yeah, I was expecting that to last a while.
I mean, it
I
kind
thought it
of
was gonna be fun.
It was kind of going on and off.
See her pull to and from Father Andrews. I really did love that moment where he hugged you. It was very cute.
That was
a really
such a
good moment.
sincere and nice moment. I think that's the thing I really enjoyed about Father Andrews. It could be so easy for him to be like to shun Gemma, especially for like just kind of disappearing, and also the whole office situation and everything. But no, he was accepting her the entire time, and that was very nice.
Good man.
I
Very
think
good.
part of that is like, not to show too much what goes behind the curtain, but when it became clear that Nicholas was going to be very antagonistic to the church, I wanted Father Andrews to not exactly be someone evil. I wanted him to be someone good, because then it wouldn't give Nicholas a reason to absolutely hate the church. Even though he ideologically is opposed to them, I didn't want Father Andrews to be a person to despise and give a reason for that. So it's partially out of a little bit of spite towards the character of Nicholas that Father Andrews didn't have any major flaws in there. I wanted him to be an upstanding, nice guy that just maybe didn't have all the answers and was a little bit flawed, but at the end of the day, definitely not evil. I didn't want him to have any of the evil aspects of the church. And I'm glad that you enjoyed him.
I appreciate that he's a well-made character.
I mean, all of them were pretty well-made characters.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Your characterization throughout this has been so good.
Thank you.
And it's like it's inspired me. Like I want to be able to do something that is so well characterized. I would love that, and you've given you've given a different context to tabletop games for me. To show that like even if a game doesn't have combat for like 3 or 4 sessions, it can still be one of the best campaigns I've ever been part of.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed that part of it. I
Yeah.
like having
Yeah.
a Scooby-Doo campaign.
I've enjoyed watching it. I only got to play one session, but it was fun.
I learned a long time ago that I like games that are run like this, that are not combat focused, but can have combat in it. It just it allows you to get more role play in. It helps you get into the character more, I feel. And I learned this with D&D. One day my friends decided to play. We're like, okay, we're not picking any of the actual classes. We're gonna pick the NPC classes. Just one level of it. And yeah, okay, it's gonna start off kind of like this is how you gain your like 1 hero level, class level. There was like an undead attack, and with NPC stats was not very easy to fight a few undead.
Mm-hmm.
But we then took that and we're like, okay, fighting that was way too much, and we almost got killed. We're all gonna go into business together, and we're gonna start a brewery. And that was the game. Was running a brewery, going to inns and taverns and trying to make deals and trying to just solving problems along the way.
Oh my god.
It was one of the most fun times I had playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
That sounds dope, not gonna lie.
Then
I'm always down for games like this.
No, I was just gonna say if there's any other questions people have, or that you have to each other. Like, do you think there was a chance that any of you would have been romantically interested in each other, other than obviously Gemma and Josephine?
I don't think that was an angle that I was aiming for with Ethan.
We can't like ship Nicholas and Ethan together.
I don't think that would have worked anyway. Hold on. Wait.
Hold on. I feel like
that's a crack ship if I ever heard one.
I feel like the obvious ship would be Nicholas and Anthony.
Yeah.
Oh.
Childhood friends and everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
If there is going to be a ship, it would be that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But the childhood friend never wins, do they?
Oh, no.
Unless they're
Apparently
dealing with
they
love
don't.
interest.
I know. Greg and Margaret end up getting together, and then
Oh,
Margaret
God.
ends
Oh,
up
no.
Nicholas's stepmom.
No.
And then the whole story turns into an anime. Yep. Okay, there we go. I can't believe my stepmother made the magical internet underneath our house that is the bank in the middle of town. In another world.
Jeez.
Oh, Lord.
In that case, then, I'm going to have to end the recording soon. I'm starting to get to the end of my disk space. So this is
No
going to
worries.
be the last update in my playlist for Mages of Pleasant Valley. I again apologize to the longtime watchers that the conclusion to the campaign is like this, but there's just been difficulties, and I think this would be the best send-off for you. Otherwise, we might have been able to play one session here since we had everyone back again, but I don't know when we would have had another. And to not get, Carator's feelings on things or to reveal things to him on stream, I feel like would have been kind of rude. So knowing that things were up in the air, I wanted to give it a send-off, and I think this is the best one we can do. So again, I apologize that I couldn't bring the story to a conclusion that I'd be happy with, let alone I know you all would be happy with, or my players here. But for what it's worth, I thank you guys for watching so much. I started this back in season 3 of the channel, and now we're in season 5. It's been basically a full year since we started this, and
One
I'm
of the longest campaigns I've managed to be in.
It's sad to say that, but yeah, it's true. So thank you guys so much for watching. In closing, I'm going to ask each of you if there's anything you want to say to the viewers that have been watching on YouTube, let alone anyone here and watching in chat with us on Twitch. Crusader?
I mean, really, for everybody watching, like, thank you. Like, that's really awesome. To have people watching, just us hang out, have fun as friends playing a game. I think that's great. And even with this game ending, I do really hope that there's something else in the future. 'Cause I want more.
I'll tell you guys, I don't want to make plans or get people's hopes up because I do have lots of projects on the back burner and I really need to get things cleared out before I start anything new. But my intentions are to do something like a West Marches campaign in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. If you don't know what West Marches is, it's essentially where you have a hex crawl with people that show up for a session, and you just basically have random people from town join that session, do something, and then wrap up the story from that session back in town. Essentially self-contained stories where people can jump in and out at different levels, at different experiences, and then at the end of the session, they basically take the information they learn and leave it in a central place. And then players in the future can act on that information and do things in town with each other. So essentially, it doesn't require a huge time commitment. You can show up once every couple of months, play the character that you had. You can make multiple characters. What matters is on the day, whoever wants to join in, we either have a very small, intimate group of people, like 1 or 2, or we might have like 8 people and do some big battle or have some big event happen. And it's, again, I know that already sounds fantastical, but I just want to float that idea out there because if there's people interested in that, I could help do character creation and we can get that started, but not for a couple months probably.
Really good to me.
Will hopefully
sounds fun.
in a
Nice to be
couple
happy to pop
months
in and out.
know more about how my work schedule and everything's going to be, and we'll be able to do something like that because I'd really love to keep playing in campaigns with all of you.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, we'll see.
Mhm.
Since I've been doing the Goblins, being a guest on the Goblins campaign thing, seeing how the Pathfinder Forge system works, it seems pretty good. So I might want to jump over there and start learning that, and then see if it's something I want to do. But anything else you want to say, Crusader?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna try and like plug myself here, right? So
You can. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead and give yourself a plug. I mean, people have reached the end of the video or end of the series. I know we do plugs a lot at the end of each episode anyway, so why don't you go ahead and tell some people what you're about, at least for now.
Okay, well, for now, I am Crusader Corrupted. I stream on Twitch, and currently I'm actually getting really into Star Wars The Old Republic because it's a free-to-play MMO. I've been into it ever since the beta, and lately I've been streaming it. Been a lot of fun to share that storyline with people, so I think that's going to be a regular thing on my channel now.
Awesome. All right, why don't we ask ID? What are your closing thoughts on the campaign, and then also maybe explain yourself and plug yourself?
Explaining myself, that's gonna be difficult. But my thoughts on the campaign overall. EO, thank you for letting me be a part of this, even though I wasn't the most organic addition to the party. I'm glad that I had an opportunity to bounce off of people and have fun with our characters' personalities and how we played them, and just had fun in general. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here
Yeah.
too.
Glad to. As for the who I am and what the hell part, yeah. No, I'm ID10. I'm a tech gremlin, and everything seems to go wrong when I arrive, which is perfect for this. So no, I stream on Twitch over at twitch.tv/ID10_T if you want to take a peek at me. I'm also on YouTube, TikTok, the works. I've got a couple things in the works that I guess I'll have more time to work on. Trying to do more short but not shorts format YouTube videos. I'm interested in talking about stuff that I like. And continuing to fix other people's things. Because it's a stream format I've actually been experimenting with. And I hope that that's going to be popular enough where people will accept the help and enjoy it.
There you go, guys. I'm going to get you links in the chat. There we go.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, did that actually link right?
For me, yes.
Yeah, it just didn't show you what you played last. Weird. They last played blank.
Wait. Wait, hold up. Also, Crusader appears to be shouted out to Eotidiss. What? How?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Wait, what?
Stream Elements, go home. You're drunk.
Stream Elements, what the fuck are you doing? Crusader.
That is odd.
Because
Real weird.
I did spell his name right?
Yeah.
Crusader.
What did-
Corrupt. Hold on.
Try it again.
Twitch.tv/crew. Yeah, and then the rest of that will fill out here. I'm gonna just, in case this goes wrong again, that's the direct link.
Okay.
Stream Elements, want to give this another shot? Shout out. There we go.
There we go.
That's his name. Okay.
Why didn't it work before?
Wonderful question, IT guy. Explain it.
Gremlins.
Of course.
They're on the wing. Can't you see it?
New account, new link is good.
Is
We
good.
got one in joke out of this. We got one. All right.
All right. How about you, Carroter?
I am going to be working for the census, which seems to be, for what I'm specifically doing, very, very busy the first 2 weeks of the month, and then possibly slacking off after that. Hopefully in a month or two when I've got my shit down, because let me tell you, the census training is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. I learned almost nothing during the training. I spent half the time on tech support because I actually did my training. Well, let me break this out first. They hired me about 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah, it was a long ass time ago.
Is when they hired me. And then I waited months between sending them different papers and stuff to actually, get a job. And then when I'm finally sent my laptop to be able to do my training, I do my training right away, right? And apparently no one else does, because I went through the training and found at least 3 different bugs that were going to be like site-wide that no one had done yet, because no one does their training. So I had to spend a lot of time tech supporting that, such as these laptops are so bad. When I go into the laptop and open up the thing I'm supposed to be doing, one of the buttons I can do is open notes. And when I hit open notes, it pops up an error saying that there's not enough memory to open Notepad.
What?
What? Are they running on like Celeron-based Chromebooks from 2011? What the fuck is happening?
They downloaded
So,
RAM onto it.
Did they download
This,
the RAM? Yeah.
This sounds like a government job, yeah.
So I had to deal with that. And then I drove to Chicago for training, spent a week there. The hotel was very nice. The training was very poor. They didn't have us go over a lot of stuff we were supposed to go over. There was a lot of tech problems in the class that people had to fix before we could do things. There's going to be an entirely new version of the thing we're doing starting next month into beta, and they sent us the training for that, and that caused extra problems because we're not supposed to have it. And so a lot of people were opening up the wrong thing because it's got so they give us sample addresses that we're supposed to go to. And it's the same sample addresses both for this training, which is from 2013 or something, I believe.
Jeez.
It's when the last time they updated the training to the new one. So they'd open it up and it looked almost the same, but the buttons are different enough that when we tried to follow along,
Yeah.
hit this button for this, they'd go somewhere completely else and we'd have to stop and try to figure out what happened. So yeah. And then I came back from that, and I thought I was going to have a week to do the post-classroom training and then get ready to start in June. And my boss is like, here's all these cases that no one else has been able to do. I know you haven't done anything yet, but here, go try to do those. So I got sent all the rejects and all the refusal cases and told to drive around Indiana and try to find people.
Wonderful.
And so that's why I didn't know if I was going to be able to work today or not. So yeah, that's been my life.
Fantastic.
And I mean, it is what it is. They pay me time when I'm traveling. They pay me for miles, so that's good. I'm driving over to Ohio, which is 100 miles away from where I live, because no one in my group lives over there, and they need someone to go there because we have cases there.
It sucks so
Well, I
much.
mean, as long as they're paying you.
Yeah. So I get to drive 200 miles and about 4 hours total round trip to try to talk to 3 people. I think I'm going to do that probably Tuesday.
Jeez.
So, because, it's my first month, so it doesn't count against my success rate and my, how much money they're spending on me per case this month. So they're having me do that because they can get around, the metrics that way.
Wow. Yep.
Huh.
That sounds like management.
Yeah.
And you're willing to
But,
do it, so they'll be more than happy to.
I mean,
so.
I'll take all the money for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
as long as you're getting paid.
I love this campaign. I'm really sorry I'm kind of the reason why it's stopping early. But you can just blame the government for everything else. Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, thanks, Obama. You got anything to plug, Carter?
Not anymore. If someone comes to your door and tells you they're from the census and has the official badge, can you please do the survey and not just hang up on us? 'Cause that makes my job a lot easier. We do surveys outside of every 10 years, which is the one everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, yeah, I don't think I'll be doing much of anything online except if I get invited by any of these wonderful people. Then I'll try to do whatever I can for them.
Oh, thank you. I know you've been you were doing Core Keeper with Kiana.
Yes, that's been very fun.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And
That's
I've been
fun.
doing what was it? Air hockey.
Oh, Omega
Omega
Strikers.
Strikers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that game's pretty fun.
That seems fun.
it is.
Well, then how about you, Kiana?
What should I start with?
Well, you can talk about yourself or your final thoughts on the campaign.
I guess my final thoughts on the campaign is that it has been wonderful. I really would have loved to see it seen all the way through. I understand why it's stopping, but regardless, I will very much value this campaign. It has been absolute inspiration to me. Yeah, I will cherish it and the characters that have been interacted with.
Thank you.
I suppose next is who the heck am I, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I am Kiana. I have been playing Gemma. Probably one of my favorite role-playing characters of all time. Probably. Probably only second would be oh god. I shouldn't be bringing that up right now. Do you mind if I go on a side tangent? No, I won't. I will spare you all that story. Anyway, I'm a VTuber. I have been kind of going on and off about things. But I have been working in the background for quite some time, working on a little bit of a return. Kinda, sorta. I haven't officially announced it yet, so. But, yeah. Sorry, I just kinda got a little anxious.
It's fine.
Classic Keon.
Mm-hmm.
No, you.
She says, while probably thinking up in her demented, twisted little mind some horrible tweets to put out on the internet.
Horrible. I
Well,
think you mean
I don't
wonderful.
Oh, yes, I mean
know.
wonderful.
As in wonder, like wonder, as in like how awful meant full of awe. or something.
Yeah.
And definitely twisted.
And being silly. Sorry.
Well, I guess in maybe like a few days, expect a tweet from me on Twitter about my plans moving forward, I suppose.
Well, there we go.
I guess the big thing to mention is I do have a YouTube. That's probably going to be the focus of what I'm doing things from now on. It's just
YouTube's good.
YouTube is good. I like YouTube. It's a very nice platform.
Here we go. I can also put that in here because they now have the little @ symbol things for creators. There we go.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's quite
Shit,
nice.
that's right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. YouTube's adding some pretty cool stuff. I like that it has like a different section for like live streams and podcasts and stuff. It's neat.
Mhm.
Ad redeems YouTube, you cowards.
If they add redeems, like, oof.
I did see someone say they managed to like hack that in somehow.
Wait, really? How?
I don't know.
Interesting. But yeah, I've inspired for things.
Well, thank you. And I hope things work out, and I'll be looking forward to that announcement then.
Thank you.
And how about you, Spoonie?
Well, I didn't get to play much of the game, but I've had a blast with it. I had a blast coming up for character because I'm not making a like antagonistic to the party character. That's something kind of new to me. So that was fun to do.
Yeah, playing the bad guy is fun.
Yeah. I don't really have anything big to like plug right now. I'm doing a big marathon in like a month, but that's about it really.
All right. Well, I put a link in chat so people can follow your Twitch over there. Hopefully they can follow all of your guys' socials through those links as well, so that they can find you in all wonderful places where VTubers and maybe even fleshy people can be found. You gross. Real life people. Weird, but whatever.
The term flesh tuber hurts viscerally.
As for me, I will be having some sort of big event at the end of this month. It may be a subathon, it might not be. I haven't put it hard-coded, but my birthday is June the 30th, so I'll be gearing up for something around then and setting up a birthday stream of sorts. Outside of that, things are also winding down for me. With the season 5 release, I've finally got a lot of work out of the way, but as I mentioned before, I have a lot of projects on the back burner that I need to get cleared out. So I think over the next month, you're going to see me pulling back from live streams and stop streaming a lot in general and focus more on back end things and avoiding burnout, because I think over the past 5 months with learning Blender and running this campaign, doing live streams, the Mistress and Mustache Mondays with Thrav, and playing a bunch of new games and stuff, I've just sort of, I think I reached my limit, and I need to start pulling back because I've been going hard for about 1.5 years now, and I don't want to ruin what I've started. So
Yeah, I did want to say you've made great progress with Blender.
well, thank you.
Yeah. I actually have a couple people who might want to ask you some questions.
I've had a couple people ask me if I'm opening commissions, and I kind of want to do that, but at the same time, one of those projects is updating all my models and getting them all into this season 5 aesthetic and mechanical difference in my season 4 models. So I'm going to be working on that. But just tell you guys that have been watching the YouTube channel and watching the uploads. I know there's a lot of you that are very dedicated to this, and I appreciate all of you watching it. And I hope that you continue to support the channel, even though this isn't going to be something that will be continuing. So again, I appreciate it. And with that, I think we might say our final goodbye. Until next time, or the next project, or what it may be, remember to take care of yourself and take care of those around you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.